Thank you, councillors, and those here in attendance and anybody who might be listening in. We're opening up today's meeting on the unceded lands of the Palawa people, the original and ongoing owners of the lands. Opening at 1 p.m. Please be seated. Noting that we do have some apologies here today. Councillor Gibson, Councillor Dawkins and Councillor McMahon under agenda item number 1. Nothing in agenda item number 2, but at 3, declarations of interest. A councillor must declare any interest that a councillor has in a matter before any decision on that matter commences. Do we have any declarations of interest? Deputy Mayor.
11.1 on the basis of a property that might be looking for something similar in the future.
11.1
and 19.1.
and 19.1. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other declarations of interest? There being none, moving forward to agenda item 4, confirmation of minutes. The recommendation is that the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the City of Launceston Council held on the 5th of September be confirmed as true and correct record. Somebody to move? Councillor Britton. A second to Councillor Harris. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Agenda item number 5 is council workshops. 5.1, council workshop report, 5th of September till the 12th of September. The recommendation is that council notes the council workshops conducted and attendance since the last meeting. Thank you. Somebody to move. Councillor Walker to move. A seconder. Councillor Britton. Councillor Walker, would you like to speak to any of the workshops conducted?
Just briefly, thank you, Chair. To note that in that workshop, we've had an Albert Hall site visit. It is exciting to see the progress there, and you know what a huge contribution that will be to Launceston when that is completed. Discussions around NTCA sports complex management, which have been somewhat elongated. But necessary for the future development of that area, which will become a premier community sporting arena for Launceston, something that I think is definitely worthy of federal funding in the next round of potential funding via federal election promises and so forth. Just some big ticket items in there generally, I suppose, that I just want to make note of. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Britton is the seconder. Any further contributions from the table? Anything to close, Councillor Walker? Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. At agenda item 6, councillors' leave of absence applications will be considered in closed council at agenda item 23.2. Community reports. We do have a community report here today at 7.1 around Tour de Cure. If I may ask Kim and the team to join us at the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for allowing us to present some information to the Chamber regarding our involvement with Tour de Cure, a nationally known organisation raising vital funds for cancer research, treatment and prevention projects. Our names are Pete and Kim McCarran, Launceston locals who have been involved with this organisation since 2017. Pete is a police officer of 30 years and I'm a pharmacy assistant, and together with our daughter Leah, we have participated in a total of 20 Tour de Cure events. Our why has always been our loved ones who have passed or who are currently battling this insidious disease. A 3-minute presentation isn't long enough to list the names of these beautiful people or the various types of cancer they have or are experiencing. Since 2007, Tour de Cure has raised 130 million, funded 1,019 cancer projects and achieved 156 major cancer breakthroughs. These are great numbers which continue to grow. Signature tour this year was a lazy 1,400 kilometres of cycling in 9 days from Hobart to Adelaide. in March. 150 riders and 50 support crew travelled 3 days in Tassie, spending Saturday the 16th of March here in Launceston. Each night on tour, TDC holds a community dinner, and at these functions, a $10,000 cheque is donated to a local cancer group in the area to assist with the work they do locally. Since we became involved, Tasmania has benefited. The Cancer Council has received this grant, the University of Tasmania, Melanoma Tasmania, Koala Kids Foundation, She Gynecological Cancer Group, the North West Regional Cancer Group, and most recently the Look Good Feel Better group in Launceston, who assist patients with wigs and support. Our 6th major fundraiser is at the Plough Inn on the 26th of October, in readiness for the next tour, which is a 3-day ride in Victoria in mid-November. Pete and our friend Craig Lehman, a local, who lost his wife Julie to melanoma 15 months ago, will go as a cyclist and in the support crew. We hasten to add that all the money we raise at our fundraisers goes straight to Tour de Cure, and less than 5 cents in the dollar goes to essential admin with this organisation, which is something that's really important to us. We fund our own way to events, pay for our own tickets to our fundraisers like everyone else, and pay for the various costs associated with running them. Whilst we can do this work, we will. We have invited you all via email, plus sent an email to the Launceston City Council staff. Unfortunately, our only response was to invite us to come for a quick chat today. We understand you are all no doubt very busy people, some with your own businesses, but it's a little disappointing to not receive a response. It would always be lovely to have the support of our local council. We are just a small family trying to do something big for others. We have, however, managed to raise over $200,000 since 2017 through plain hard work and no corporate support. But local small businesses have been stellar in their support of us since we began this work 7 years ago. And we appreciate being able to share with you what we've achieved, and thanks for the opportunity today.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Noting that 7.2, our community report, has been rescheduled, moving forward to 8, public question time. 8.1, public questions on notice, which are published as a part of this agenda. 8.1.2 we have in there with Carvilla. And at 8.2 we have public question time, noting that the rules and the regs are available and displayed upon entry. You may ask a total of 3 questions each. Any public questions without notice? Mr. Smith.
Robin Smith on behalf of Coffee Republic. Previously I asked about the changes to the bylaws that Launceston had. It had a parks and facilities and a malls bylaw. In that was the ability for council to stop drinking in public, particularly certain parks and squares around the city, most notably Princess Square, where alcohol previously was prohibited. And then the council amalgamated the 2 bylaws into one and gave a lot of the enforcement powers and direction and relied instead on the Police Offences Act. Unfortunately, there's nothing in the Police Offences Act that seems to cover that alcohol issue. Is there something, could council then write another bylaw, amend the existing bylaw to include these areas of Launceston that currently don't have coverage of?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Yeah, there's currently some further work going on in our governance space around those bylaws and looking as to how we would be able to maintain function of events to provide alcohol in those spaces and how that works through our governance. So we're just looking at that still currently at the moment, as of even last week.
Thank you. Thank you. I wasn't aware of that. Very helpful. Thank you. I may speak to, I think it's 17.1 on reserve, all right, when the item comes up, Mr. Mayor. But I do have a question. Ordinarily, you don't answer questions on something that's on the agenda item. Not sure why. I don't know of a reason why you don't. But I'll ask the question anyway. It might help the discussion. question I have is when I read the chronology and the details, and it's certainly council's put a lot of work into it, on a number of times, this is the first thing I notice, is it gives the times that an individual or an organisation, it just says strike it out, was present at the sites. And it talks sometimes of the Roundhouse, and other times it talks about Inveresk Northern Car Park. Why does it go to so much trouble to detail? I think on 17 occasions it notes the time that this either committee, which is strike it out, it's described, or a person, whatever this noted activity is. Is there some police requirement for them not to be there, or are you trying to suggest there was engagement with them, or was there something? On so many occasions, such detailed recording of the time this corporation or individual, or I think it's an Inc., was present. Could you help me with that, please?
Oh, I think it's just around transparency, but yes, being a live item on the agenda, councillors will hear that question and they may choose to take that up when the item comes in at 17.
Very well, thank you. In the same vein, the trailer or trailers, is this trying to get them as a static trailer, or are they meant to come in every day and leave as, say, a food van would, or are they to be... Because when it talks of a 6-month lease, is that an operating lease that parks in there permanently and, I don't know, puts them on jacks and takes the wheels off? Or is this come in the morning and go away, or perhaps once a week? Well, what is the intention? It might be in there, I'm sorry if it is. I haven't had a chance to read it as thoroughly as I might, but what is the intention of this lease to park these trailers? Is it just to be a structure, permanent, or is it day visits? Or?
Thank you, Mr. Smith, and I think that's a part of why councillors found it so difficult to also come to a conclusion around this, but we'll further discuss that as we do get to 17 on the agenda.
Thank you, thank you.
And that's the 3 questions there, Mr. Smith.
Was that 3?
2 questions of strike it out and 1 around.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have another question.
I'll allow it, Mr. Smith.
It is up to the discretion of council. It's not compulsory.
I'll allow it, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. I give way if there was anyone else.
No, that's okay.
Beam scooter has come to the attention. Council officers did write a report. I think it was an officer report on the Beam scooter. How much of that was the report written by council officers, and how much was written by Beam? Did they have any input into the writing of that report,
Sure.
other than giving, obviously, the data?
Yeah.
I did raise the issues of what was in that report, and I had some doubts about it. So.
Okay. Now, let me take that one on notice, Mr. Smith. I can't speak to how that was written, but I'll take it on notice for you. Thank you. Any further questions without notice? Okay. Moving through now the agenda, we have no items at 9 or 10. So moving into Planning Authority. Under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993, Council acts as a planning authority in regard to items included in this agenda under 11. 11.1 is the 212 York Street sign install a new third-party illuminated billboard sign, noting that the Deputy Mayor has stepped out for a moment. Before we do get to the recommendation, I will open up to the floor. I do have one noted speaker, Ben.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Ben Cooper. The address is 212 York Street, Launceston. I refer to the planning application lodged by our company, Claude Neon Media, relating to an illuminated billboard sign in the Launceston CBD at 212 York Street. In our considered opinion, the city's planners unreasonably and incorrectly refused our planning application. For the reasons I'll speak about shortly, I would respectfully ask you to reject the proposed recommendation and move a new motion accepting our planning application. Number 1, a study showed that the sign entirely fits within the streetscape of the area. We know it's opposite of Woolworths. Other signage is present in the area, and it is located in an urban mixed-use zone. The sign helps local business, it does not move, it automatically dims depending on ambient light level, and it's shut off between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. 2, the sign is permitted under the Tasmanian planning scheme. An independent expert has assessed the sign to be safe to drivers also, and no representations were received from residents as part of the planning and advertising process. Thirdly, the city's own strategic plan is to facilitate the sustainable growth of the local economy and to respond to opportunities for growth and renewal of that economy. Claude Neon Media is a wholly Australian-owned small business, and our entire business model is centred around providing low-cost advertising for small local businesses, not big corporations. 4, we've offered to guarantee space on the sign for free to local Launceston charities, not-for-profit organisations, and to the city itself. In Launceston, this might include the local chapter of St Vincent de Paul, who's actually our national charity, Sally's Ride, Effervescence Tasmania, City Mission. Anything is up for grabs there. We do not want to turn Launceston into Las Vegas. It's not our intention at all, and we've worked hard with the planners to ensure that the sign does not impact the amenity of the area. The sign represents a balanced approach to the use of commonplace technology. For these reasons, I respectfully request that you reject the recommendation to refuse the planning permit and move a motion approving the application of the sign. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Gav. Thank you. Are there any other speakers to the item? Before we get to the recommendation as well, was there an alternate motion that was being brought forward to council? Yes, there is one prepared, but what I'm asking is if you want to bring it forward or not, or do we want to debate the original one? It's at your discretion.
It's probably always been a positive motion rather than a negative motion. And I see that as a positive. So I'm happy to stand and bring in the positive motion that we do in fact approve the signboard and go against the officer recommendation in this instance.
Thank you, Councillor Harris.
Thank you.
So CEO, around the description of what this now looks like. So this would be, Councillor Harris, that in accordance with section 51 and 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993 and the Tasmanian Planning Scheme at Launceston, a permit be granted for the billboard sign at 212 York Street, Launceston, subject to following conditions which have been, I believe, circulated. Happy with that? Okay, so moved by Councillor Harris. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Pentridge to second. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. A little bit unusual in this occasion. I do have a few questions that might help provide useful background to where we've got to today. So my first question is in regard to, I've never seen an application for a billboard in this respect in front of a council in the 6 years or so that near 6 years I've been here. What has changed to make this now come to us now having to debate and vote on a single billboard?
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Town Planner Rachel.
Thanks for your question, Councillor. Third-party signage has only been permitted in the current planning scheme, which is the Tasmanian Planning Scheme, which is the state planning provisions, and that's since September 2022. Prior to this, the Launceston Interim Planning Scheme of 2012 was in effect, and it's up until the current planning scheme. During that time, the third-party signage was prohibited, which is what's been applied for, and illuminated signage had a performance pathway only. There were also no standards for billboard signs in terms of their size and their area. And there were no provisions for third-party signs prior to that in the 1996 planning scheme. Notably though, Councillor Harris, you've identified that there has been some permits, or not very many permits. We've identified that there were some permits issued for illuminated billboard signs in the early 1990s, with a period until pretty much the present time where there weren't such permits being issued. Signage was assessed during that time under the miscellaneous use classes under the Building Act because it was not included in planning schemes at that time. So that's the context surrounding where we are at today.
Very comprehensive response. Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you, Rachel, for that comprehensive response, indeed. I do have a couple of other questions. I believe there's been an illuminated sign with third-party signage approved and installed on Upper Brisbane Street, shall I say, as you come off the bridge from Riverside. Was that able to be approved by an officer because perhaps it replaced an existing static board, or what was the process that actually went on there?
This is not
Thanks again for your question. Yes, it was importantly though the conversion of an existing billboard, so it's not a brand new billboard that was approved. The conditions are such that they are consistent with the conditions that are before you in terms of the illumination and the dwell time, etc. So, but importantly, it was a conversion of an existing billboard that has been approved.
Thank you. So there are still a number of what I'll call static existing billboards in the city, then, you know, ones on Bathurst Street and Wellington Street that currently aren't converted. So should they become converted, that will again just be a officer approval, or will that also come back to us as a council?
There is a pathway, a performance-based pathway, but I would suggest that it would be subject to representations. It's a little bit unknown, and we would also need to assess what was proposed in terms of hours of operation, illumination levels, proposed dwell times. That would be up for assessment, and obviously the position of where the existing signage is.
Yep. Thank you very much for that. That was what I thought that would be the case.
Oh, and the zone, I should say, the zone as well. Yeah, the provisions within the zone, because some signs are permitted in certain zones, so that's really important to note.
Okay, thank you. The zoning would always come into it, I guess. So looking at my amended motion that says we should be permitting this, I guess everyone's fear seemed to be that we would be turning Launceston into a southern version of Las Vegas with signs on every building by setting a precedence for this particular approval on this sign. I see it as a logical extension of new technology into an area that has a fair bit of passing traffic. York Street is one of the collector roads that operates around the CBD and channels our east-west traffic. So hence, like as the traffic comes off the bridge from Riverside, there's a fair traffic volume of passing cars, which to a company like Claude Neon would be attractive to their potential buyers of advertising space on the sign. However, I don't see that same amount of volume passing traffic on St John Street or parts of Brisbane Street up the avenue, where people may fear this would lead to. Having one sign on the corner or partway down the block, just past the Painter's Pot, if it's still called that, perhaps Inspirations now, where there has been a sign, an illuminated sign for Roberts for many years, but since they moved out of that building that's no longer there. And this is a sign that will change once every 30 seconds, no quicker than that. And it will be a static sign. That is, it's not a video showing movement to catch your eye. It is simply there, like a poster, and then 30 seconds later, another poster will create its, it will be there. Now, for most people travelling down York Street, they will be lucky to see one version of what's on the sign. Traffic doesn't bank up that long that you'd actually see multiple versions of whatever's on that sign. So as such, I see that this is where the world is somewhat moving to, and in fact has the capability of being more efficient, because as the Ben said, from Claude Neon, they could have 10 advertisers advertising on there, which means that's 10 single static signboards that we won't have cluttering up our historic buildings that may have been put in place if we deny a sign that allows it to be changed every 30 seconds to a new sign. So from that point of view, I am asking that my fellow councillors endorse the amended motion to in fact support the alternative motion to support this sign at 212 York Street. And I look forward to hearing what others around the table might have to say on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Pentridge is the seconder.
There's very little else I can say except compliment my good friend here. I agree wholeheartedly, and I hope the rest of my colleagues feel the same. I feel like I must comment on the concern about turning into Las Vegas. Goodness me, I'd like to think we'd turn a few more lights on in Launceston, because I think most people have turned them off. So I'm fully supportive of it, and for my knowledge of this particular company and the people in it, I'm sure that if there was a minor problem, they would work with us to rectify it. Otherwise, they might not get as good a hearing next time they put an application against. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pentridge. Lon Vegas, coining that now. Further speakers, Professor Rose.
Thank you. I stand here to refuse this motion and support the original motion by our planning authorities, not to install a digital billboard of 6 meters wide by 3 meters high, on the basis that it's not compatible with the streetscape and the character of the building environment. That the sign also can cause an unreasonable loss of visual amenity to the surrounding area, and it has not been demonstrated that the sign is necessary in this location. I'm not going to repeat what the planning authority, I think they have explained the reason why the sign should be refused. I'm going to tackle it from other concerns. My main concern about digital billboard in general, and this is the first time we're tackling, but it will be the beginning of many. You all have to go to our main road. You see so many walls. They are static signs now, but they have a future of digital billboards for them. There is main concern about the impact of negative impact on health, on light and visual pollution, as well as traffic safety. And there is a major concern about these billboards actually in many cities around the world, and some of them actually they are restricting them, and some of them they are banning them. First of all, billboard lighting is a major source of light pollution, and it has harmful effects to human health. Digital billboard, it produces an array of blue, green, and red light, which can create the image. And it's known that the blue light, which is produced by the LEDs on the digital board, has a negative impact because it's similar to a molecule called melanospin, which regulates the level of melatonin hormone, which regulates the circadian system in our body. As a human, as you know, our body operates on 24-hour cycle known as the circadian rhythm, or like a clock, which regulate physiological processes as well as a sleep-wake cycle, as well also control brainwave and hormonal production. Now, the LED light, the blue light specifically, influence the receptors of the eye which are sensitive to this light. And research have shown excessive light, especially at night, can interfere with the melatonin production, and therefore it can disrupt sleep, causing sleep disorders, as well as insomnia, depression, and cardiovascular diseases. More importantly, recent research have shown that these disturbances of the melatonin can reduce production of a neurochemical of the brain called acetylcholine, which is reduced in people with Alzheimer's. My second concern about it will be about road safety. Well, there are several studies to show that car accident can be caused because of driver distraction and inattention because of this billboard sign. Having illuminated board will cause distraction and will have impact on how well the driver manage their speed, maintain their line, focus their attention, and react to stressful situation. Road safety is not the laughing matter. You know now, if you are using your telephone, even if you look at it or touch it, you will be fine because it has been shown it can increase accident.
Professor Rose, would you like an extension of time?
Yeah.
Somebody to move? Councillor Britton, and seconded by Councillor Pentridge. All of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried.
More recently, in 2022, Texas study showed that the number of crashes increases when motorists are confronted with displays of billboard signs. And therefore, my question will be, if accidents do happen in the future, will the council be liable to this? My third point will be tackled about energy consumption. As Launcestonians go to sleep at night, the digital billboard quietly will guzzle electrical energy. And therefore, it will contribute to carbon emission. In fact, electric billboards consume as much energy as 15 ordinary houses. Well, I can conclude, my councillors, my colleague, that the city of Launceston has been embracing sustainability and strive to become the greenest city. Therefore, the proliferation of this digital billboard, I think, will send the wrong message. We should balance digital billboard advertising with the principle of road safety, environmental responsibility, and energy efficiency. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Raze. A question, Councillor Walker.
Yes, is it fair to say, thank you, Chair, that if this was a static sign, as we're used to, which did exist there previously, it was an application for a new static sign, that we wouldn't be here today? It's because that it is not just illuminated, because a lot of these signs are illuminated. I suppose I'm asking for the difference between an illuminated sign, if someone was to apply in that same location, even though there was one already existing, forget about that for a second. If someone was to apply for an illuminated sign there, as opposed to a LED changeable sign, would we be here? Is that
we understand.
theoretical of a question? I'm not sure.
Town Planner Rachel.
Thanks for your question, Councillor. I think it's really important to point out a couple of things in answer to your question. Today we're considering a third-party sign, which is really important. That's what's being applied for. It's not the conversion of an existing sign. The existing sign was a painted wall sign. So, yeah, if it were not a third-party sign, for example, we potentially could consider it under different criteria. Illumination is separate to that. So, yeah, again, we would have to consider that under some different criteria. So it may be an illuminated sign for the business of which that building is occupying. So that would be not a third-party sign. So there are different parameters around the assessment. But today we are assessing a third-party illuminated sign, a brand new sign, not a conversion of an existing sign. And interestingly, as detailed in the report, the size of the sign, so the wall painted sign and the illuminated sign, there's a disparity between the size of the sign. I just wanted to point that out. But that's in the sign. This sign is taking up 30% of the wall. A wall painted sign or an illuminated sign potentially may not take up that amount of space. So it's worthwhile considering that.
Thank you. To speak or further
No,
questions?
a couple of questions more.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, obviously you're looking across one property in order to see this sign, and traditionally that's always been the way. If a sign goes up, it might be viewed across another property. But in this case, is there any? There's been no representations from that adjoining property, and yet is the amenity of that property under consideration, bearing in mind that this is a moving illuminated sign or LED sign?
Thanks again for your question. Amenities pretty well discussed in the report at length, and there's a definition for what the amenity is, and it's the compatibility with the streetscape and the heritage character that we've assessed.
Well, that gets to my third question, which was the heritage character. Is that primarily the heritage of, let's say, the hotel on the corner? Is it the entire streetscape? Because certainly the buildings in its immediate vicinity, I don't believe are heritage buildings. And of course, adjacent across the road is a new supermarket, for example.
Actually, thank you again, Councillor. Immediately beside the property on either side, there are two heritage buildings. So there's the Thine Cottage or building and the millinery on that side, and the other side is the Jailhouse Grill. So there are two sites of heritage value that flank the subject site. We are considering a surrounding area, and that is deemed to be in the report again, up to about 100 metres, and I believe the applicant also nominated a surrounding area in their report and reflected upon that. So that's what we are considering. Character is difficult to confine to just an area by meterage, so I think it's important to understand what the character of our heritage character in Launceston and the context of that as well.
Thank you. Further speakers or further questions? Councillor Walker to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I will speak, and I won't pretend to have the level of knowledge about medical implications of blue light and signs and things like that. I will speak, as a previous speaker did, speak towards the traffic assessment. I know the traffic assessment report there from Pitt and Sherry did say that this is not deemed to have an impact on pedestrians or cars in the area. And and in reading that assessment, I thought it was fairly brief, and I wonder how they can conclusively come to that solution. We all know when we pass signs, and they're static signs, once you've seen it once, you're probably not going to look at it again. It becomes part of the furniture, so to speak. But I think it is different than a sign that is going to change. So you're more likely to, indeed, that is the purpose of the sign, is to get your attention. So we're not to know what visual aspect each advertisement is going to have, for example, but one would assume that it's not going to be entirely passive insofar as it's wanting to get your attention. And I suppose that is the point in terms of the traffic assessment, that if someone's to travel that road every day, they know that sign is going to change. They're probably more likely to want to look at it to see what is on the sign that day. So that is a point of distraction, I would argue, regardless of the fact that the traffic impact assessment is saying, no, this is not an adverse distraction for pedestrians or for drivers. So I'd contest that point, notwithstanding that is independent advice provided to us from Pitt and Sherry. I do tend to side with our planning assessors. I don't think that we're about to become the Southern Hemisphere equivalent of Las Vegas anytime soon. I do think we run the risk of providing, I suppose, what you call precedence in a way. We all know that modern technology is changing. This indeed may be a perfectly applicable technology in certain areas, but I don't think we know what those areas are. I do think we're talking about inner city Launceston that is, in a general sense, a heritage-rich area. And I'm not suggesting that if this is to be passed today and approved, that it opens the floodgates for signs to go up everywhere. But indeed, there are already a lot of existing static signs. I suppose we've come to the point where we're used to seeing those in many locations, maybe some less desirable than others, but nonetheless less of a distraction. And indeed, Claude Neon might well argue that, yes, this in turn will become similar to this. You will get used to that being there as the norm. It's part of modern technology. And I can see those arguments, but I do respect our planning officer's recommendation based against the performance criteria and indeed against our planning scheme. And I do, in this case, agree with that, and so I will not be supporting this amended motion. I would like to think that we can have a balanced view when it comes to this. I know there are illuminated moving signs out the front of schools, for example, who want to pass information off to their parents and students. There might be, other instances where this is applicable, where it's on maybe in a service station or somewhere where it's off to the side of the road. But in it being on the road, I do have those concerns. It's highly public and highly visual. It will have a visual impact. I I certainly appreciate what Claude Neon also do, and indeed St Vincent de Paul are very close to our hearts as well. We work very closely with that organisation in Launceston. So it's another aspect of this which I find interesting, really, that Claude Neon are partnering with established organisations and charities. That's a great thing. It doesn't mean that it makes any difference to this decision today, unfortunately. So, with that all being said, I think I've made myself fairly clear, and I will not support the amended or alternate motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Any further speakers or questions? A question, Councillor Harris.
Just a question which may not be able to be answered. Dr. Raze spoke about the blue light effect on the human body from such signs. Reading in this, is there any degree of relativity between what a sign that you might glance at for a couple of seconds gives you compared to perhaps looking at the blue light on your phone or looking at your LED TV at home for several hours before going to bed? Whether there's any relevance to that particular aspect, or in fact, does the sign actually have the blue light effect in it?
Thanks for your question, Councillor. A little bit of discussion up here. I apologise. It's honestly not considered in the planning scheme, so it's not something that we can consider. Yeah, thanks.
Sure. Anything to close, Councillor Harris?
I will if no one else will. Wants to speak.
Speakers?
Thank you. Look, I think we've heard from perhaps both sides of the argument today from Dr. Raze. He's quoted, as I said, some interesting comments about health based on light pollution, and yet everyone probably checks their phone before they go to bed just to make sure they haven't had that last-minute message. And they probably just turned off their LED TV that they spent the last 3 or 4 hours staring at as well. So there is probably lots of light that comes into your life. I don't think passing a sign through a cage of window that might even be lightly tinted is necessarily going to affect your health that much. I do also think, I agree with the Pit and Sherry, that the distraction level to drivers would be minimal. And in fact, I can see a bonus from this sign because it has always been a bit of a dark corner. We're coming around that corner at night, that behind the hotel and in front of the paint store, it has always appeared to be quite dark in there, and having some subtle lighting from the sign would in fact improve the safety of those who might be walking down that road, or in fact for people to be able to see if the car park is actually empty or not as well to park in it. So from that point of view, I encourage my fellow councillors to support today's motion and to approve this sign. It won't be the end of Launceston as we know it. It will simply be another sign on the wall that will offer potential for events and other things in our city, because as Claude Neon have said in their opening, when they made a statement about it, they do intend to offer it to local charities and charity events. So it actually will have a further use rather than just pure advertising for their commercial profit. It will actually tell people of our city what else is going on and that they can support. So I do encourage everyone to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Now, just before we get to the vote, CEO, just on some clarification around the conditions.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, our planning team have advised us in the course of the debate, noting that the alternate motion was only requested about an hour ago, that there is a planning condition that has not been included. So you will note on the screen behind me that that additional planning requirement or condition has been added in there. So we just want to make sure that the mover and the second and, of course, the meeting are aware of that in making your decision.
Mover? Seconder? Okay, putting the motion to the vote. All of those in favour of the alternate? What are you doing, Councillor Kai? Counting. Okay. Just wait, I'm not sure what Councillor Kai's doing. No, Councillor Palmer. Support, okay. And those against? 2 against. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Returning Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Okay, 11.2. We have 325 Watery Plains Road, 34 Watery Plains Road, and 74 Watery Plains Road at White Hills. Now, before we get to any recommendation, just opening it up to the public, I don't believe I have any noted speakers. Anybody would like to speak to 11.2? Okay, moving to the recommendation, which is that Council notifies the Tasmanian Planning Commission that no representations were received during the public exhibition period and drafts an amendment to be approved as certified and exhibited. Somebody to move the recommendation. That has been moved by the Deputy. It's been seconded by Councillor Walker. Deputy Mayor.
I thought I'd step back in for the hard one. Look, I think this is a procedural thing. We voted on this a month ago to send out for public comment, and it's come back with none. Therefore, I think it's appropriate that we approve this today and send it on to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Walker is the seconder.
Yes, this is a change of zoning which will make some changes, some uses permittable that aren't currently permittable as agricultural zoning. So to change it to rural, and it also in turn helps to apply the priority vegetation component to a large section of that land, which is of course a positive outcome. I know that, I get less time than everyone else, but...
I didn't press it also. Please continue, Councillor.
Yeah, everyone will say it wasn't them, I suppose. It's fairly straightforward. We've already had this discussion a month ago, as the Deputy has outlined. This now goes to the to the Commission for ratification, and I think might even come back to us after that once more. Or is it? No. It may be all done and dusted at that point. Thank you, but no representations is always a good thing. Thank you.
Thanks,
Chair.
Councillor Walker. Any further speakers? Any contributions? Anything to close, Deputy Mayor? Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Announcements by the Mayor have been published, but I will throw... Beg your pardon? Oh, we're no longer sitting as Planning Authority. So moving to 12.1, and just noting that the representation's by the Acting Mayor. So I might throw to you, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Just to note that Friday the 13th, the officiating of the launch of the Viking Bowls event was postponed, so I didn't attend that, and I didn't attend the 2024 NTFA Premiership. I was there celebrating the Premierships from the week before.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and thank you for that representation. So moving to councillor reports at 13, starting with Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I was at the Council 5 kilometre Women's Fun Run, officiating to help that wonderful fundraiser, and they raised over $100,000 on the day with about 2,600 plus participants, which was a great fundraising effort for the Council. Interesting, obviously we had the Tour de Cure talking about their fundraising efforts as well. Out of the Shadows Walk on Tuesday at 6 a.m. start in City Park, a group of about 50 attended that walk about about suicide prevention. And also we had a meeting which many of the councillors attended with the Minister, Nick Street, on Friday the 13th, I think it was, to discuss the UTAS Stadium transfer as well. So that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, I did forget to talk about the things I attended as Acting Mayor, but one I just did want to pull out, which was sort of partially in my role as a councillor, but also in a role as the chairman of the Cape Hope Foundation, was on Tuesday, was it? On Tuesday, I attended the Max Garden Spring Launch along with yourself and Councillor Palmer, which I'd have to say it shows how great community can be. There was a garden which looked in full flourish when we were there the other day. But having seen it several years ago as an outlying gorse infestation, and to see what it's become today is absolutely fantastic, and a real shout out to the community of Ravenswood for the work they've done, in particular Pete Richards, the gardener up there, who's done a wonderful job in doing that. We also acknowledge how community does get involved. The Cape Hope Foundation, who I represent, were very involved in the garden's creation, but it was fantastic to see Steve Edmonds from Chris Brothers there, who designed and built a bridge, a removable bridge, so they could get across Unum Creek there, which was fantastic. And it's a huge meeting place for community, a great place for people to go and learn how to grow vegetables, pick vegetables there, and there are places there they can just chill out and enjoy it. And I think the Speaker of the House, Michelle O'Byrne's donating a barbecue shortly, so there'll be barbecue facilities available as well. So that's what community is all about, and I think it was just absolutely fantastic to see 60 or 70 members of that community come there on Tuesday to enjoy the opening of that, and the future benefits that it will bring to that community will be fantastic.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Further councillor reports? Professor Raze.
Thank you very much. It's just like to recognise that this week is Dementia Action Week. And Dementia Australia has called for urgent and sustained action by communities and all governments at all levels to increase awareness and understanding of dementia. Perhaps I would like to take the opportunity how in their report it has been pretty shocking to say that 70% of people don't know much about dementia. And nearly like a third think it's normal aging. After all these years with the informations, and breakthrough heard in the news. But I would like to reflect on the Launceston experience, because I think it's very relevant, how City of Launceston actually had played part in raising awareness of dementia. It was in April 2021, when I contacted John Davis, who was the general manager here, and I suggested whether we can give a talk to the public, and we organized the talk in the town hall, and it was full, so we organized another night. But from those meetings, it's stimulated to us to organize more meetings. So through the council here, we organized during the senior weeks talks in Unum, Mowbray, Lilydale and Ravenswood, and the mayor and deputy mayor actually did attend those talks. Moreover, the council then contacted other councils in Tasmania, which led me giving talks to a variety of places, including Hobart, Devonport, Sheffield, Huonville, and other places. But the important, just show you the importance of being in direct communication with the community is so important to raise people awareness of that. Perhaps I would finish by one of the attendance of my talks, which shows that how there is an increased awareness of the dementia by just giving the presentation. One of them said, the normal pressure hydrocephalus is a treatable cause of dementia that was brought to our attention, and therefore, patients who present with memory problem, balance problem, incontinent, you should never label them to have dementia until you do a brain CT scan. From that statement showed me how people, oh yes, if we have memory problem, we should seek assessment treatment. So I would like to congratulate the council about how it played an important role, and that's actually to show in our priority number 5 about 4-year planning, how the council is thriving to improve and develop our awareness of and puts the health and well-being of the community as an important factor. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Councillor Walker.
Thank you. On Monday, I attended, along with Councillor Alan Harris, a forum that had been organised by ABC in in Tasmania. On Tuesday, thank you, Councillor Harris, organised by ABC Radio that was held in Launceston, on the panel being our Chief Executive Officer of Homes Tasmania, Larry Morgan-Thomas, Professor David Adams from the University, Joe Fearman, who's now the Chief Executive Officer of City Mission, and finally the local member for Bass, being Bridget Archer. But what was most heartening was a really good attendance of around 100 local Tasmanians who have a passionate interest in contributing to solving housing problems, crisis, especially in Launceston. So that was a wide-ranging discussion, and while it wasn't an official council invitation, it was heartening to see not just members of local council in Launceston, but also council members from up the coast in attendance. And it's the type of thing that needs to happen more often, and that's why I stand to mention it today, that this community discussion, I think it was noted, everyone learned something new because everyone brings those perspectives together. But more importantly, those connections are made. And while we all endeavour to do that in our work as councillors, I think that these public forums are a chance for people to understand the complexities that otherwise don't get explained. For example, a discussion around medium density housing, which I think is something that everyone is in favour of, everyone would like to see happen. And for a general public perception on that, might well be that why isn't council doing that? Why isn't it already happening? But it gives an opportunity to explain the difficulties and to explain the lack of interest from developers in that area at the moment. So my experience of that was entirely positive. The community sentiment is very much focused around wanting to support solutions. The solutions are many and varied. And I would encourage Launceston Council to consider similar types of events ourselves in the future. Thank you. And the audio is available, I think, on ABC Radio.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Any further councillor reports? Councillor Palmer.
Thank you very much, Mayor, and I'd like to back up the Deputy's comments. This week I attended the opening of the new mobile bridge and food forest garden located at Max Community Gardens up there in Ravenswood, next to the Ravenswood Men's Shed. Big congratulations to Starting Point Neighbourhood House and its many volunteers. Special mention to Pete and Jay and the team. They showed us these amazing pieces of wood, and inside them they're growing mushrooms. He showed us all the compost and the coffee compost and all sorts of amazing things that they do up there. I'd also like to say thank you to our very own Deputy Mayor through his role in the Cape Hope Foundation and all the amazing work that they do. The team from Chris Brothers, Steve Edmonds, their generosity is to be commended. And also the City Mission were there serving us all beautiful burgers and sausages and wonderful treats, which was outstanding. There was about 60 community members there. And Pete, the gardener, is so passionate about his community and really wants to get that news out there that they've got this garden up there for the community, the whole community, to get involved and get people eating fresh and healthy produce once again. Along with yourself was there as well, Mayor. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Any further councillor reports? Councillor Kai?
Well, last Friday, the 13th, with many of my fellow councillors, I also attended the meeting with Minister Streets regarding the transfer of the UTAS Stadium to ask questions and to raise concerns, which we had many of. That's done. I actually have something else to say here. So to everyone listening, I would like to announce that the Heritage Advisory Committee are running an arts competition for children between the age of 4 to 17 with $1,400 worth of prizes to be won. So this competition is called Heritage Sketch, and this year's theme is We Are Champions of Our Heritage. To enter, simply submit an artwork in any form inspired by your favourite heritage place and write a short description of your artwork and what it means to you. Entries open from Monday the 16th of September and close on Friday the 1st of November. This will be a great school holiday activity for the whole family. For more information and to submit your entry, please visit our City of Launceston website and search Heritage Sketch, or simply go to our customer service counter at Town Hall here, where they have both the information flyers and entry forms. We hope that this competition will motivate and encourage everyone, especially young children, to be more aware of the beautiful architecture in our city. We as a community should take every opportunity to celebrate and appreciate this second oldest city in Australia. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kai. Further, yes?
I have flyers if anyone have children that they could take.
Thank you,
Okay?
Councillor.
Thank you.
Okay, no more further councillor reports. We also have no councillors' questions on notice. Councillors' questions without notice at 14.2. Any questions? Councillor Britton.
Just wondering if we could get an update on the flood mitigation report, the scoping stuff from Pitt and Cherry.
Flood mitigation report update. Thank you. General Manager Eberhardt.
Yeah, our officers are still working through finalising the report, which we're expected to bring back for endorsement. It'll be October.
Cool. Thank you. Further questions without notice? Councillor Kai.
Well, it's a question that's sort of been answered, but could General Manager Shane just talk about that little house on top of on the hill on the walk to the gorge, please?
So, for those who aren't aware, there's a structure below the retaining wall that council replaced the private one that's popped up. Officers are working with an outreach worker to remove that. We don't believe anyone's sleeping there. It's just used for other use. So we're working through that over coming days.
Thank you. Further questions without notice? Okay. 15. Notices of motion 15.1. Notice of motion CCTV system within Launceston Central Business District. The report is that CCTV plays an important role in our community, and council already own and operate 77 cameras across the Central Business District and other assets. CCTV footage can assist the police when investigating crimes and incidents. CCTV is a surveillance tool but can also act as a deterrent for crime and antisocial behaviour. CCTV can be a sensitive issue for many of our residents, and it is prudent that council has the appropriate policy, systems and infrastructure in place. This motion is to undertake a review of the current CCTV systems and processes. The output of this process is to include a report to council that outlines the current state of council's CCTV network, including identification of any improvements that may be required. I'm bringing this forward to councillors today, looking to Councillor Harris to move it. Thanks, Councillor Harris. A seconder? Deputy Mayor. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is an important motion for the council to consider. I do remember a similar motion in the term of the last council revealed that council had something in excess of 520 or 550 CCTVs. 350 of them were in fact internal, mostly within the QV mag, car parks and this building. So CCTV does play a big part of it, but certainly the ones that are out in the public area, the public realm, the 77 cameras as quoted here in the item, we need to understand, A, where they are, and perhaps more importantly, where they aren't. What can they see and what can't they see? But also, what can they be used for? And I do remember that the Officer Eberhardt was able to tell us that a camera that was on top of Patterson Street Bridge, or the Patterson Bridge as it's called, I should say,
wasn't able to be used for surveillance of vehicles going past because it had another feature, and I think it might have been for the floodwaters up the gorge. So we need to understand what each of the cameras can or can't legally be used for to ensure that they are being perhaps best utilised. And we've seen just earlier this week with the so-called attempt, if you like, on President Trump's life, when the shooter on the golf course was able to be tracked through CCTV cameras, number recognition, while he escaped the site, but also crossed the state border or county border, whatever they have in the US, to enable his arrest. So I think it's a very timely motion that we should understand what we've got. And as said in the report, it is something that probably requires a certain level of expertise and also time that this council officers probably don't have with the other work that they have on. However, it is work that is too important for us to ignore, and I feel that this motion should equip us as a council to understand what's out there and perhaps then also to identify the areas of greatest need and also then potential areas of funding from state and federal government to make such cameras part of how we secure the safety of our citizens, particularly if we are to have a more vibrant nighttime economy. People will only come into town when they feel safe, and certainly, as mentioned, having CCTV cameras certainly does make people feel safer about their being out on the street, even though technically it generally isn't being observed, and so it's not like anyone can say, hey, stop that, if someone were to do something. But it certainly does make one feel much safer and certainly does deter the criminal element to go to areas where they can't be seen by the CCTV cameras. Look forward to other councillors' comments on this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Now, I did get a little ahead of myself. I would like to open up to the floor because I saw some movement from the gallery. Mr Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and Councillors. Yes, my apologies, I didn't put my name down to speak to this motion. I apologise. This is good to see, but I notice here it just speaks of the Launceston Central Business District. Why just that area? Because one of the cameras we heard about wasn't in that area. That would be a question that I'd ask, but I would ask to support this. The statistics from Tasmania Police, their corporate performance report for the Launceston district, for our northern region, our statistics for public area offences are through the roof, and we have the highest. I won't bother with the statistics, but they're there, and they're pretty shocking for the Launceston region. 77 cameras doesn't seem a lot in the CBD, considering Hobart have about 4 or 5 times that. But I would be very concerned, although I'd ask councillors to vote for this, I'm concerned that a consultant would be required. I really would be very much against a consultant being employed. You're looking at $10,000 or $20,000 when I'd expect council officer expertise to be suitable to cover that. And of course, as the previous one, Mayor Albert Van Zetten said, the council is guided by Tasmania Police, where the siting of the cameras is. So that would certainly be the start, and I'd be very reluctant to hear, considering Australia has, I don't know, 500 and something councils. I can't see the need for any of those other councils I've ever heard of requiring a consultant to help them with something as functionary as CCTV installation, but thank you.
Thank you, Mr Smith. I just learnt something as well. As the bringer of the motion, I'm the one that moves it. So, Councillor Harris, that was just speaking for the seconder.
Speak to it.
No, I think it's all in my preamble. So, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, and thank you for bringing the motion forward. I think it's worthwhile, and I do take on the point because I was actually going to raise the issue as well as to whether the CBD should be the sole focus of things, because there are other areas within the city that may require that. But I just wanted to actually harken back to not long after this council sat, I went to a Smart Community Summit in November 2022, which actually a guy called Brian Cross from Milestones talked about smart video technology for safer cities. So I'd just like to make sure and maybe go back and take on board some of the comments that were made in there, thinking that 70% will be living in cities by 2050. intelligent cameras have moved beyond CCTV, make data and centralised solutions not a fragmented in a siloed situation where we have different people who are capturing data over here. Purely the safety and security of individuals and privacy is got to be central to what we're talking about. But there's a lot of stuff that came out of that particular session, which I would just, and I think I've sent that on to the CEO a couple of weeks ago, where I think that the things that were discussed at that forum are certainly very relevant in this review, I think. So I endorse us doing it, but we can maybe go a bit broader than that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Are there speakers or contributors? Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for bringing this forward. I think I would have possibly appreciated the opportunity to have some input into this before it came to this table, but here we are.
Sure, we sent it around.
I do note that this has been a concern of Councillor McMahon, and I just will note that is also an area that she has worked in, that improving safety and law-abiding behaviour in the CBD. But having said all that, I do take note of our community constituent points, Mr. Robin Smith, that a consultancy report, I think, would be valuable in terms of a strategic outlook moving forward. Not necessarily a consultant to just undertake a review of the current system and to provide options for system improvement, but more a strategic, I suppose, approach in terms of, of course, the police have a number of cameras. The hospital, for example, has a large amount of cameras. There'd be no doubt other institutional organisations that have cameras all across the city. So I can see that there's a strategic approach. And of course, the other side to this is addressing antisocial behaviour, and that's not what's not included here. And some might argue that's not the purpose of this motion today, and that may well be true, but it becomes the elephant in the room, really, if we're not developing policies and implementing actions that directly address antisocial behaviour. If we're just putting up more and more cameras all the time, I start to wonder what it is we're trying to achieve as a cohesive community. So, having said that, I would like to have thought, if there was to be a consultation, that it would bring in some of course, the work that we're doing in that smart cities area, some of the work that I know Councillor Mackenzie, our Deputy Mayor, did bring back and report upon in some of the innovations in this space, rather than just finding the dead spots in our CCTV network and putting another camera up. How we address all that, I'm not sure. Whether I move to amend this motion and this recommendation, I'm not sure. At this stage, of course, I will support the motion. I just feel that, though, it maybe is not holistic enough in terms of our strategic moving forward. I could well see a consultancy report come back that says, well, you need 58 more cameras and these are the spots. You need to work better with the police network, and I don't know. That I can see that would be the outcome rather than a long-term strategic goal, which is obviously to reduce crime and antisocial behaviour in our city. And I don't think that's just. It's certainly not just the job of police. That they are policing the behaviour, and it's not just the responsibility of council either. It's a combined effort, and I think that's what needs to come out of this particular. If there is to be a consultancy, it has to be that holistic sort of response. So I will accept this motion today. I will provide further thought to it, and I suppose I do reserve the right to amend it in the future, at a future meeting, if I think that would be desirable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. And just for some clarification, this notice of motion in draft form was sent to all councillors on the 27th of August. It did have two responses from Councillor Palmer and Councillor McMahon. Councillor McMahon, I will quote, "Very happy to see this and look forward to bringing it to the vote," in which we had further correspondence between Councillor McMahon and myself around co-bringing this to the team as a part of her experience and the Safer Communities. And just for some further clarification as well, General Manager Eberhardt around the consultancy.
So, look, the office's intent to work up the scope and come back to a council workshop. And the intent of, you're right, if it was just reviewing gaps, then we can do that ourselves as officers, but it needs to be more holistic, which is why we need expertise in this area to help us out in setting that direction.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Pentridge.
Having listened to what everyone said and had some personal experience with cameras,
recently too,
I think that I have to disagree with my colleague Alan Harris when he said we don't have enough time. I don't think we have any choice. I think we've got to have cameras, and they don't necessarily have to be monitored, but it's got to be recorded. And if there's an issue, then we've got to be able to go back to that camera and download the footage. And I think it's important. It's only the beginning of where it's all going to go. There is some great technology out there. But to be honest, the cameras are only a very small part of it, because it's getting someone to act on the information. And but we've got to start somewhere. And I think if we get the footage, then we can move to the next stage of what we actually do with that footage and how we get a response. From the old cliche, it's no good closing the gate after the sheep have bolted. But I think we've got to keep pushing it and doing it and recording it. And I think it would play great dividends to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pentridge. Any further contributions? Okay, well, nothing to close, so we'll put it to the vote then. All of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. At 15.2, we have notice of motion emergency management response from Councillor Pentridge. The recommendation is that council explore options for the purchase of mobile power units or generators for the use in events of power outages and to support council's emergency management response, and a report to be presented to council outlining these options for council consideration. So moved by Councillor Pentridge. Somebody to second, Councillor Walker. Councillor Pentridge.
Having, again, had some involvement with this and having visited what happened here recently, and let's not kid ourselves. In the interest of rising costs, we've cut back our workforce to a dangerous level. I think our power outages has proven that. It's not that there's been anything, no dams burst or there's no major issues. We just don't have the people on the ground to get around the places that we needed to get to. Now, if we do invest in a generator or two, I couldn't help noticing that our staff did do a good job, and they went to areas that was underwater, and they did a good job in fixing it. The sad part is that we had pumps of our own that couldn't be used because the power was out. So the generators are only part of it, but if we have a system where in emergencies like this, and if we go back to New Orleans, the biggest problem was trying to get the water out once it got in. And so what we should do is just have a look at what we can do with a mobile generator so that we can plug it into emergency areas, utilise the equipment that we've already got installed and plug it in and get the water out of our system as quick as we possibly can. So I think it'd be a good investment, and it wouldn't go astray to be used in emergencies. And the reason I'm saying there'd be people here that would say, you can go and hire them, but I think anyone, I know the call, we've got several, I know the people that have called to borrow generators, and if they're listening out there, I hope they return them soon, because the situation's over and done with that. But we need to have them in reserve so that we can use them, because the hire companies, they go out straight away. I mean, you got to remember dairies, everyone, you can't operate. And when you've got hundreds of thousands of litres of milk, but without power, the milk gets condemned. So you can't just hire them, we've got to have our own.
Thank you, Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Walker is the seconder.
I think the first port of call, thank you, Chair, is of course that we need to have that contingent emergency ability for this organisation. It's obviously in times of emergency, whether it be flood, fire, power failure or whatever, that this organisation is able to have continuity of operation, even if it's only just the essential parts of this operation. So, and I'm sure to some extent we've looked at that in the past. In fact, the town hall has a generator. Unfortunately, during the last power failure, that was unable to be successfully operated. So that's of concern. There is obviously other alternatives. There are battery banks. Certainly the council has invested in solar panels on quite a number of properties, but that doesn't help us in an emergency. And I do have a question to ask of our General Manager of Cultural Services, because I do also understand that when it comes to the QV Museum and Art Gallery, it too may have some concerns in this area, bearing in mind that that's a repository of a large amount of artefacts that may, and artwork that may require, for their longevity, some reliance on temperature control.
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Yes, we're a part of this conversation on looking at any long-term effects to a powder outage, particularly for the material cultural collection. As you note, we do hold specimens, DNA and other significant national sort of research infrastructure. It weren't affected in this outage, but it was a bellwether for us to make sure that we could be a part of that conversation.
Thank you, and I will conclude then just by, certainly, obviously by seconding the motion. I'm in full support of this. I think, with modern technology, there may be some creative solutions that may, I know that even Tas Networks in this recent power outage are able to redirect power in different directions in an emergency, and so therefore being able to provide power to some areas that isn't the normal way, but in the event of a line being taken down, for example, that power can be rerouted, depending on the situation, of course. So, too, with the council, it may be that we are able to, not forgetting we once did own our own hydroelectric station in Launceston, and indeed still do own that building. There might be, long-term opportunity for council to provide its own security of power generation, whether it be a generator, whether it be hydroelectric power, whether it be batteries. That would be something that I hope that this, if it is successful today, may at least look into. But certainly for the continuity of the business, and that includes the QV MAG, as well as Remount Road and this building that we're in, I think this is highly desirable that we take this action.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Further contributions? Anything to close? Councillor Pentridge?
No, thank you. I think it's covered. Thank you.
Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour?
Just one moment. Look, I mentioned cattle and milk. I think we need to look at the regulations, from my understanding, the amount of food that we have to throw out in this last period of time. And I realise that's not our concern, but the need for generators is quite huge in times like this. So it does cover, in our current society, a lot of aspects where, so I think it'd be money well spent.
Thank you, Councillor Pentridge. Okay, putting it to the vote. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. At 16, we do have some committee reports. At 16.1, Launceston Sister City Committee. The recommendation is that council receives the report from the Launceston Sister City Committee meeting that was held on the 22nd of August. I've got Councillor Britton moving this with Councillor Palmer as the seconder.
Thank you very much, Mayor. It was a good meeting. It's the first time we've met in about 12 months. We discussed essentially the future of the committee, and I can say that there's going to be a report brought back to council, and hopefully we can consider that at future sort of, in particular, our strategic planning meeting later on this year. We all agree that it can be a good cultural and economic driver for the city, but it probably just does need a little bit of pointing in the right direction, so that'll be good. Secondly, it's the 60-year anniversary of our sister city agreement with Ikeda next year, so the mayor from Ikeda and a small delegation are going to come here, and obviously another report will be brought to council regarding whether or not, well, I believe we are going to send a delegation over to Ikeda as well. So, yeah, some exciting stuff coming. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Britton? Councillor Palmer, nothing further? Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks. It's great to see the Sister City Committee back in action again. Just by way of note, I'm heading off to Japan tomorrow, and I am planning to call in and see the Mayor of Ikeda on the way through, just as a courtesy visit while I'm in their country. I think we need to remember with these sister cities why they came into being in the first place, and Ikeda is probably a really good example of a sister city that came back 60 years ago, almost to the year, as a result of wool. And a guy called Ken Fuji came out here many, many years ago buying wool from Tasmania, and moreover at Launceston he'd come, and we had 3 wool sales a year, I think, at that time. And Ken came out and purchased and always paid a world record price for a bale of wool. So the economic nuancing of the sister city relationship was very rife back in those days. Now, since time's gone on, wool becomes a different commodity in the way it's traded, and that sort of impetus has disappeared. So I think what we need to do going forward, and I look forward to seeing the report coming back, is making sure that we value the relationships and why they firstly came in being, and then reset them to say, well, what's an appropriate situation for us going forward. The cultural aspects of it, I think, are extremely important as well. Us having a say from some other part of the world about what we're about and understanding what they do, I think, is really good culturally. We're a city made up of many nations now, with people who have immigrated to here. So, quite word, have moved here. So I think it's really important, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that report come back, because I think it'll be valuable for us as a city today and into the future.
Thank you, Deputy. Councillor Walker?
Look, I have said previously at this table that I would love our council to form a relationship with another city, not necessarily based on the economic benefits that we might receive or that they might receive, but more so based on humanitarian need in the world today. I do believe that if Launceston Council was to build a relationship with a city of a similar size somewhere else in the world that wasn't as fortunate as us, perhaps, financially or otherwise, that would be an extremely worthy action or desire for the council. I'm not sure if that's something that has been discussed on the Sister City Committee, but having said that, with this 60th anniversary coming up, I'm just wondering how I can get on the committee in the next few months before... No, I do think that is an important relationship that we have. That is that 60 year. I know that there's been cultural exchange, but also, fauna exchange in terms of, the Tasmanian devils and wombats and things like that. It's a many-layered relationship that we've had with Ikeda. But certainly, I would encourage the committee and in the compiling of that report, and I do look forward to that too, for those types of alternatives to be countenanced. Because the world has changed. The world has changed a lot in 60 years. So perhaps a new response would be desirable. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Further contributions? Anything to close, Councillor Britton?
Yeah, just thank you to fellow councillors. It is obvious that there's a bit of an appetite for this committee to be doing more, and we do have plenty of ideas. There's a couple of new ones there. Some standouts, which I'll just say. Obviously, we need to work more with our city gastronomy, and we can tie in with that. A really good idea as well was looking maybe even to New Zealand with a bit of tourism and stuff like that, and definitely take on board Councillor Walker's comments as well. So, yeah. Looking forward to getting a report and seeing what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Putting it to the vote then, all those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. At 16.2, we have the audit panel meeting. The recommendation is that council receives the audit panel meeting report, which was held from the 26th of August. Somebody to move? Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Walker. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And whilst it's not in detail there because it is in confidence, most of the information that's discussed in the audit panel, some of that information feeds its way out by way of accounts and so forth during other times in meetings. I think you can tell by just reading through the narrative and the length of the number of things that we talk about in there, there's a significant amount that gets discussed. We have 3 experts from outside of the council that sit on that audit panel, as well as myself and Councillor Walker, and a number of officers that sit in on it. And I think it's really the workings of the financial aspects of this organisation, and I think and governance in some respects is very much tied to this. And I do, whilst there's not a lot of detail there, I think there was a question asked at a previous council meeting about more detail for councillors, and I know the minutes of those meetings are now available on the intranet for us to look at, should we so desire. So I do welcome people on the council to actually go back and read those, because there's some good reading on them.
Thank you, Deputy. Nothing further? Any contributions on the table? Anything to close? Okay, putting it to the vote then. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Just. Okay, looking at the Community and Place Network. 17.1 is the request for facilities on council land. Now, I will make note that in public question time, there was mention to the desire for public comment. So I believe 17.1, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Mayor and councillors, thank you for the opportunity. I've got a few questions here. I know they can't be answered again, but what they do is they draw attention to a particular item. And I appreciate the officers have had time, and I work in the mall and I see a lot of homeless people. And no doubt I'm going to have to look them in the eye and say, why did I speak to the council to get them to support this? Because it's very hard to speak against anything. But the reason I can quite easily is that only just the other day there was a structure down at the King's Wharf that burnt to the ground. Thankfully, Tasmania Fire Service put the structure out. It was a terrible mess down there. Had that have been anything to do with this trailer proposal, I don't know how I would have felt towards council had they approved. There was a man or an individual who died of gas poisoning next to that structure down at King's Wharf recently. Had he have had an appropriate alarm, he might still be alive today. And of course, the homeless and unsheltered have been in Launceston. We know of many stories of them getting in all sorts of trouble. We had someone up at Princess Square who died, burnt to death with a gas stove within the last year or so. So certainly these people are the most vulnerable in many ways, and that's why it's beholden on council to protect their interest. It would be quite easy to say, I'm sure we can find a bit of land to put a trailer on. And again, the question, I don't know how long it's to be put, whether it's a daily drive in and drive out. Or 6 months, and I wouldn't like the idea of someone just today moving that 6 months, put it there. But we've seen a permanent structure at the Roundhouse. Wasn't successful. It was out of control, I think it's safe to say. It was a lawless land. It was an utter schmozzle as far as a trial goes, although it was unauthorised and not intended. It wasn't a good start. The security is a problem down there, and it was council land, so I would hold you responsible. There's a long list of sites. And I flicked through them, looked, those I didn't know, looked on Google, and they're just not suitable for a trailer on number trails. So it's very hard. I don't think council's given up, although this report does say in number 5, no formal council decision. Later in the document on page 44, it talks about the application process. I don't know if it's over. I don't know if it can go anywhere. I don't have the imagination to know where it will go. But certainly I'd hope that council will continue to engage with whoever these individuals are to help them. But I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any further speakers to 17.1? Okay, getting to the recommendation, noting that there is an amendment. CEO?
Thank you, Mayor. Through the Chair, based on the workshop that was held pre the council meeting and this item being briefly discussed, some wording that was proposed during that is the recommendation as printed within the report, with an addition at the very end. So going to the motion as printed, where it says council-owned land full stop, now adding comma, and inserting the words based on the information provided by strike it out to date, full stop. I believe that's on the screen now as well. Yes.
So Councillor Walker? Well, are there other amendments that are going to be made to it and it's going to get messy, or do we want to debate this in its current form and then? What would you like to do, Councillor Walker? Okay. I'll let Councillor Walker. Yep. No, perfect. Councillor Walker to move, seconded by Councillor Harris. Okay then. Thanks, Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. I do wish to start by thanking our General Manager of Community and Place for this report. It is a lengthy report that I would encourage anyone interested in this to avail themselves to, make themselves familiar with, and understand that Council has invested a lot of time and resources in trying to find a way forward with Strike It Out. This document shows that. The request to place these facilities on council land is always going to be a fraught one. We work closely with services that have the suitable accreditation in order to deliver these types of services, albeit in usually bricks and mortar situations. There are some food trailers that different organisations operate, but by and large, the types of services, showers, sleeping facilities and things like that, are bricks and mortar facilities. What Strike It Out would like to do is to provide those as mobile facilities, and that's where, if you're not fully accredited in that area, this becomes a fraught issue. Where to put them, who then takes responsibility for them, all those types of questions. And I hope people can appreciate that is difficult. We're talking about people's lives, and no one's suggesting that anyone's intentionally going to put someone's life at risk. But there are many and varied scenarios where providing this type of service without accreditation could lead to difficulties. Now, having said that, there are many models and examples of mobile types of services, and I'll bring our attention to one of those, and it's called Orange Sky, and some people may be familiar with Orange Sky. They're a nationwide service, started in Brisbane by a couple of young gentlemen who wanted to provide a laundry service for people who found themselves homeless. They got a van, they fitted the van out with washing machines and I think a dryer, and they went around to where people were living rough, without a house, and offered that service. That service has spread, as I say, nationwide. I think there's around about 4,000 volunteers who help to facilitate that particular service. And it's not dissimilar to what Strike It Out would like to do. They would like to provide a mobile service, but in another way, they'd also like to locate it permanently on council land, and this is where the problem begins. We have permanent accommodation for people experiencing homelessness. We have permanent showers for people who need to access that. And council indeed help to facilitate that at various locations in Launceston. So if it's going to be a mobile service, then perhaps the model needs to change ever so slightly. Perhaps whether it's sleep pods, whether it's showers, they do need to be truly mobile. They need to be able to be located at a different location depending on different needs at the time, rather than being parked permanently on one piece of, in this case, council land. I suppose I'll provide an analogy in conclusion, and that is food vans. We have bricks and mortar restaurants in our town. We also have food vans in our town. But if a food van was to park itself permanently in one location on public land, we might take issue with that. Indeed, the bricks and mortar restaurants might take issue with that as well. It supersedes the concept of it being mobile, that it is put permanently in one location. Now, I know that does happen on private land, and you can think of examples of food vans that are permanently located in Launceston, but they're on private land. And that may be indeed a solution for Strike It Out. No one begrudges or wishes to minimise the effort that Strike It Out go to provide these services. What has to happen next, and what I hope this motion today doesn't preclude, is the idea that this story can continue if we can find the right model and help to facilitate the right type of appropriate service. And that's why I give that example of Orange Sky as being one that has been immensely successful. Indeed, if someone wants to start Orange Sky in Launceston, I think it would be similarly successful. But if you work your way through the report, yes, Councillor does have a small extension, if I may. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, moved by Councillor Britton, seconded by Councillor Harris. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion's carried. Please continue.
I never know whether I can vote for myself extension or not, but I do put my hand up. If you worked your way through that list, you'll find a whole heap of land that I don't think any councillor would know that we own some of those properties listed, and indeed, a large portion of them are not suitable. I would tend to countenance the idea that none of our land is suitable, because the type of service that's being offered and that has been developed has not been developed in consultation with the council or in consultation with any other service provider. And therefore, it is always going to be problematic providing what seems like a great idea, indeed has the support of the community as a great idea, and yet in practicality is going to cause a series of problems or just potential problems in the future in terms of litigation and just in general compliance. So I don't want this to be the end of that story. I want Strike It Out to continue their great work that they started by providing a mobile food service, by providing blankets and tents and all those types of things, by their existing food depot where they do supply people in need with the essentials that they require. But in this particular area, when it comes to what might be called mobile sleep pods and mobile showers, which are really, they're wanting to be permanent, I think we need to augment that model. And hopefully we can do that with Strike It Out as this progresses. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. The second to Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Walker, for the introductions. Yes, I read all of the comprehensive report prepared by the officers, and I do thank them for it. We, as a council, have probably spent hundreds, if not thousands, of hours on this particular issue of homelessness, and particularly with Strike It Out. However, despite looking at 348 parcels of land that council own, none of them have been found to be suitable, and that's mainly due to the size, the shape, but also the zoning and what else is located next to it. And as Councillor Walker said, I think Strike It Out started off providing food to the homeless and have now tried to migrate into something that is much more complex and is probably needing them to rethink their business model. Having mobile accommodation that needs a large truck to move it probably makes sense to park it somewhere for 6 months at a time, but that in fact is not what the council land can be used for. It's not like the van that pulls up with the washing, the orange one that I have also read about, where they simply turn up and they come into a parking spot, do their washing, have a cup of coffee, washing's dried, and off they drive. That isn't what we can do with a semi-trailer that has 7 sleep pods on it, nor a trailer that has 2 showers and change rooms on it. It does require a lot more infrastructure, and as such, I think Strike It Out need to rethink their business model. Everyone, as Councillor Walker said, has some sympathy for what Strike It Out is trying to do. It is simply that other organisations like City Mission and Salvation Army and the others that operate in this space have had many decades of experience, and they've grown to understand what is required from an OH&S, from a legal, from a council perspective, getting the zoning right so that the land that you do properly that you do establish such a business, and call it a business because that's what it is, such a business on, is actually properly zoned. So I think I want to thank our council officers for what they have done. I think they are looking for some direction from us to say, what do we keep doing? And I think it's really now for us to say to Strike It Out, you need to come back with a different business model, and one that I think is more mature and actually addresses the issues as if you are a larger player in this particular space. And I think there would be many lessons to be learned, and I'm sure guidance would be provided from those who already are in this space, in this city, because each of them look after a particular segment of the market, and that is what any successful business needs to do. It needs to look at who is their customer, and how can they help them in what they're doing, as well as funding them. So Strike It Out have gone from simply providing food, and all of us can run a barbecue. But to provide a hotel is something that is not necessarily what each of us can do. That is a specialist skill that needs a crew with lots of OH&S around it. And unfortunately, when I looked at some of the paperwork that Strike It Out had put forward to say that they were going to have 24-hour coverage on site with just 2 managers is illogical. It works for a while, but you're going to burn those 2 managers out. And so you need to have greater resourcing to do that. And that is probably where they're going to struggle initially until they perhaps can raise that within the community. So I wish them well on where they're going, but I believe that what we have put to the council today is a suitable and hopefully draws a bit of a line under the current process, that despite council being a large landowner, none of the land is actually suitable for what they are attempting to do with their mobile trailers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Deputy Mayor.
No, thank you. Unfortunately, I'll have to leave before we vote on this matter, so I will speak briefly, but I just did want to speak in support of the work that our council officers have put in over 2 to 3 years at least in trying to resolve a situation. I've reviewed this. It pains me that we don't have a solution. It really does. And I want to acknowledge the work that Strike It Out do in our community. And as Councillor Harrison Walker said, it started out as food providing. I've looked at other examples of other new startups in this area, like Shekinah House. They've gone to private premises. They've built toilets and showers in private facilities, so it's off land. And I think that's where our biggest issue comes, is private and public. Public land is for the community to use. And unfortunately, if some members of the community are not behaving in the way that they need to behave, it impacts other members of the community. And unfortunately, we've seen time over time again where situations have arisen where there have been flashpoints where these organisations have been in places, in community areas. I think we started at Royal Park. That created some issues. We started with some lockers. Now we've gone up to sleep pods and showering facilities, which are fantastic. And I think they'd be very appropriate in a place, but I think they need to be in a place where it can be controlled in a private environment, where we don't have to worry about what the other members of the community are thinking about what it is that we're doing. Now, whilst I have great sympathy, and we are probably in unprecedented times in regards to the homelessness situation that exists in this city and more broadly the country and the world, and I think that we as a council have stepped up through our homeless committee and various other things that we provide through the services of our officers now. That I think that we've tried very hard, and by the length of the information that's been provided to us today, we've been working really, really hard to try and make something work. Unfortunately, the model that's been put to us is not something that really works for councils. the risk management levels, a whole lot of things, and our community commitment, I think, puts us at great risk if we sort of pursue this particular direction. So my sense is that we've done a really good job. I would welcome Strike It Out to think about another model and come back and talk to us about it, but the one that's been currently put forward by them does not work to the extent that we can actually support them in a proper way. So I wish them well and happy to have further conversations with them, but I'm happy to draw a line in this chapter.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Further contributions? Professor Razay.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm really disappointed that we couldn't reach agreement with the Strike It Out, but at the same time, I'd like to commend the council and Strike It Out for all the hard work they have been doing over the last 2 to 3 years. We, especially the council, have taken great steps recently in supporting people experiencing homelessness. More important, take active part in trying to help and support people. The council have played an active part, especially in collaborating with other non-profit organizations who are really working hard in providing magnificent services, from feeding to accommodation to providing shower and also cleaning and laundry. The council a few years ago provided the PCYC, where people go there and have a shower regularly and also cleaning as well. Perhaps I would still believe that we should find some solution to Strike It Out. They have been doing a great job. Nothing better than going around and see the people going to their trailer and giving them food and drink. But on the positive note as well, I've been following homelessness issues by going to King's Wharf. It was only like last April when I went there, and it was packed with caravans and tents. I went 2 nights ago. There were only like 2 or 3, which shows that actually we're really working hard to address the problem. But we have to also be realistic that it is a growing problem, and it will only get worse. When we hear statistics which say 50% of families, and lots of them might be struggling to find food during the week, that tells me that many families are actually having problem with their living standards. And what do you expect, unfortunately, with the cost of living, inflation, cost of food, etc. It will only continue a problem. However, our state government, federal government, they all seem to be supportive of tackling the issue. Look at federal governments committing $9 billion over 4 years. State government committing $1.5 billion over 10 years. So I think the way to solve the problem is by working together. All government, local, state, federal, and non-profit organizations, we should continue to work together because that's the best way to solve the problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Further contributions? Anything to close, Councillor Walker?
It's true that the amount of people experiencing homelessness is not getting better. It's probably the jury's out in terms of whether it's getting worse at the moment. The initiatives that are being taken by state and federal governments will take years to come to fruition. Initiatives that are happening, such as building new housing and trying to find alternative models for housing, will take a long time. At the moment, via our actions, all we have is what's reported to council and what interactions council has with the various services, and a lot of that is facilitated through the Homelessness Advisory Committee. And I suppose just at the moment, it would appear as though numbers are not increasing in terms of reports that are brought to council, which is great. But certainly we're not going to see significant shifts for quite a while, and the benefits of different housing models will take time, will take years to really have an impact. So services, any service like Strike It Out that's trying to help address the problem is always going to be welcomed by the community and welcomed by council where we can work together with them. And that's what I started by saying, and I'll conclude by saying, let's find a model that will work for Strike It Out and will work for our community at the same time, and put that good energy into something that we know will be successful. And it mightn't be a world away from what they're already doing, but it has to be something different in order for that to work, in order for that to facilitate what is needed, but also for the community to feel comfortable and confident that this council is not risking ratepayers' money in the process. So I don't want this to be the end of our discussion and our relationship with other organisations who wish to make a contribution, but it does make it clear that council has to, and it's probably been clear all along, that council have consistently said we need to maintain a certain standard in order for this to be acceptable in our community. And it's not to say that Strike It Out wouldn't, it's just to say that Strike It Out haven't been able to assure the council of that. And so that is the line that we draw. From here on in, let's find a positive future. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. We have no identified items as a part of agenda item 18. So 19 is Infrastructure and Assets Network. 19.1 is the NTCA Sports Complex Management. Now, I do have quite a few noted speakers here. I'll just work my way through the list as it's written, starting with Lawrence.
Thank you. Lawrence Dodson, Unit 3, 49 Country Club Avenue, Prospect Vale. I'm the president of the Launceston Cricket Club. We at the Launceston Cricket Club believe that a transition to a management model whereby the City of Launceston assumes full responsibility of maintenance and booking management of the NTCA facility is in the best interests of the users and the facility itself. We feel that Cricket North's focus should be on running the cricket competition, and while we acknowledge the huge amount of work that they've done over the years, we believe that maintaining a multi-sport facility severely detracts from this primary focus. Further to that, the standardisation of the leasing and licensing agreements that will be put forward will consolidate. And consolidation of the booking system under council management will provide the tenant clubs an efficient system of governance, and will also provide better opportunity for the transitions between the summer and winter seasons. And as we continue to develop the master plan, which the Facility Management Group is working on at the moment, we feel that it is in the best interests of that particular project that the council is facilitating the entire complex.
Thank you, Lawrence. Lynn.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and councillors, for the opportunity to speak. I'm Lynn Hendley, the NTCA Board President, on behalf of the Board, to clarify some information and give context around the recommendation. The NTCA and previously the Launceston Cricket Club have been managing the NTC grounds since 1843, and that is for 181 years. The information provided to you says that the board has evolved into managing a multi-sport facility over 30 years, when in fact, Australian rules football has been played here since 1886, and the board has effectively been managing a multi-sport facility since that time. In the last 20 years, the growth at the facility has been phenomenal. In 1989, when the council was gifted the land, which was then and still is leased to the NTCA board, we had 3 cricket clubs with 3 teams, each a football club with 2 teams and a soccer club with 2 teams. We now host 2 cricket clubs with 6 to 7 senior teams and around 9 to 10 junior teams each, plus a multitude of introductory players in what we call the Blasts program. We have Cricket Tasmania on site using the indoor and outdoor facilities for high performance and SWORD program, a Veterans Cricket Club and the Tasmanian Veterans Cricket Association throughout the year. Public schools using the grounds weekly, every autumn and winter for football and soccer. Australian National Cricket Carnivals hosted during summer most years. The Australian New Zealand Railway Institute periodically conducting week-long carnivals at the ground. Cricket umpires headquarters, external cricket clubs using the indoor facilities during pre-season, 2 Australian rules football clubs, Scotch and East Launceston Juniors, with 4 senior and around 12 junior teams, and East Coast Swans, who also use the facility for training. The total number of participants in any week playing and training would total around, could I please have an extension? Around 900 to 1,000 people all year round. The budget provided by Council for the management and upkeep of the grounds has been inadequate for it to be maintained to the standards we would all like to see. The NTC board can see the benefit of the council managing the grounds and building and maintenance, given that the historical budget provided to the NTCA has been insufficient to maintain the quality and better outcomes for the community can be achieved, as seen by the increased expenditure over the past year by the council. Given the complexity of the multi-use and the overlapping season, including the issues that arise after hours and during the weekend usage and coordination of the tenant clubs, veteran cricket, Cricket Tasmania school groups and sporting competition and carnival events, the board see itself better positioned to manage the facilities and ground bookings. A specific contact person to specifically manage this scope will be critical to the successful management of the facilities. The board, with over 180 years of managing the grounds, is best positioned to do this. There are so many other matters to sort. For example, the council has been using equipment owned by the NTCA board for almost 11 months with no monetary consideration. The board considered transferring ownership of their property to the council at a market value estimated around $700,000 to $800,000 should the grounds and building maintenance be transferred to council. I conclude by saying that the NTCA board supports the council to take over the management of the grounds, but the board would like to continue to manage the facility and ground bookings, as the board believes that they are in the best position to continue this process ongoing, and we seek support to continue the work we have done for almost 2 centuries on the management of this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. David. Okay. Lucy.
I'm Lucy Flanagan of 8 Galvin Street, South Launceston. Mayor Garwood and councillors, I'm also the Vice President of the Old Scotch Collegians Football Club, and I'm here today representing our whole club. The players of our 4 teams, senior women, senior men, reserve men and under 18 boys, our members, our supporters and all our many, many volunteers, which is our entire committee. We strongly support the recommendation that the management and maintenance of the NTCA facilities transition to the council on a permanent basis. This place is our home and we believe it's the best step forward for it. We typically host 8 Saturday games a season with 4 to 6 Friday night games, with anywhere between 1 to 4 games each day, involving anywhere between 1 to 3 opposition clubs, who bring with them their players, volunteers and supporters. Since the council has taken over this role late last year, there have been significant improvements to the facilities that have made the place a venue to be even more proud of. And on behalf of Old Scotch, I thank you for that. The improvement of the drainage and the playing surface was noted by multiple other opposition clubs throughout the season. Because we primarily use the facility outside of regular working hours, with previous management when there have been issues, particularly on game day, there wasn't a reasonable way to get assistance or guidance. I appreciate it's also not fair on the previous management group to provide assistance in these situations because of the timing of it. We're often there on weekends. Having the facility looked after by an independent group with the resources that the council has and that isn't linked to one of the sporting codes that use the facility also removes any perceived bias that could be created. We all have a strong working relationship, all the user groups, and at the end of the day, we're all local people that love sport, love supporting people playing sport at any level, and love supporting people enjoying social activities that are involved with their clubs. This wouldn't see any one individual getting any specific gain from the arrangement, but it would generally improve the facilities for hundreds of users across many clubs and groups. It would benefit all of us incredibly. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Jeremy.
Thanks, Mayor and councillors. I'm Jeremy Jackson of 89 South East Drive, Hadsman. I'm the president of the South Launceston Cricket Club. The NTCA number 2 ground and the NTCA complex more broadly are our home complex and have been for many years. This complex, as acknowledged by council, has underperformed for many years. I'm not here to speak to anyone about whose fault that is or why that might have been the case, as frankly I don't know. I am here though at an exciting time for the complex, with the redevelopment master planning underway and a level of excitement around the facility by its users that I've not seen before in my 20 years associated. I don't think anyone needs me to emphasise how important it is to get the governance model right as we move into a really important period for the complex. We believe that the NTCA facility and grounds should be managed by whomever council deems best skilled and appropriately resourced to deliver the best outcomes for all users. After seeing some improvements under council management last season, we believe the council is the best resource to deliver the desired outcomes in terms of the grounds and facility upkeep. As a cricket club, we have a really good relationship with Cricket North and we would have no issues with them continuing to manage the bookings of the venue. Bookings for the complex through Cricket North currently are a simple and positive user experience for us. Communication and two-way support between the council and Cricket North would need to be a priority in our view if the split model was to be adopted ongoing. Ultimately though, we'll be supportive of whatever governance model the council deems in the best interest of the facility and its users overall. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy. And Nicholas.
Good afternoon, Mayor and fellow councillors. My name's Nick Demden, 1 Leith Street in Norwood. And I'm the Vice President of the East Launceston Junior Football Club, a club that has grown to be one of the largest junior clubs in northern Tasmania and in the Launceston municipality. We are one of the current tenants of the NTCA ground. I'm here to speak on behalf of all our players, their families and our members. And as a club, we strongly support the recommendation that the management and maintenance of the NTCA facilities transition to the City of Launceston on a permanent basis. Since council has taken over this role, we've seen significant improvement in the overall facility in such a short time. This has included the ground surface, which has led to more use of the entire ground for longer parts of the season, improvements to drainage and works done in other areas and amenities. We'd like to thank the council staff for all their work and the improvements they've made in this time. Our club's use is often after business hours and on weekends, and the council is able to assist us with any issues in a timely manner and to our satisfaction given the resources. This is a requirement that hasn't been fair on previous management groups, as we were always relying on one point of contact, and it was a requirement they were unable to provide, nor was it fair for us to ask them to provide that. Currently, all the user groups have a strong working relationship with a shared goal of providing health and social activities for our communities and an understanding that we have the opportunity to use the facility equally. We've seen an improved governance structure as well. We feel that the facility is now being looked after by an independent party that is adequately resourced and has the skills to manage and is not conflicted in any way as they don't administer one of the sporting codes that use the facility. This removes any perceived bias that has arisen in the past and would bring the management of the ground in line with almost every other facility around the state. With the exciting news of the NTCA Precinct Master Plan and the grounds development into a fantastic multi-use facility, this is even more important, and it is vital to ensure that those in charge of managing the precinct, both from a maintenance and management, such as ground and facilities booking, are adequately skilled and resourced to do so. The East Lonnie Junior Football Club feels strongly that the council is best positioned to do this. I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Nick. Were there any further speakers? Okay, there being none, we'll move to the recommendation, which is that council approve the completion of the transition of management and maintenance of the NTCA facility to the City of Launceston as acknowledged by Cricket North and Cricket Tasmania. Approve the completion of transition by March 2025. Approves the development of the transition plan, which will include leasing and licensing arrangements of tenant clubs, booking management, plant and equipment acquisition, council-approved fees and charges for users, consideration of any financial support and or services which Cricket North may continue to deliver beyond December 2024, and revise multi-sport precinct facility management group charter. At 4, there is formally recognised the positive contribution Cricket North have made to the Northern Tasmanian Cricket Association facility via a letter of acknowledgement to this effect to the NTCA. Councillor Harris to move. Seconded. Seconded by Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to thank Lawrence, Lynn, Lucy, all the Earls, Jeremy and Nicholas for coming along to speak on behalf of their respective clubs. The NTCA ground and the whole sporting complex, as it now is in fact a very important part of Launceston's history. And it is, I won't say pleasing to see that we've got to this point. Council was called in because it was felt that they couldn't get the staff, first of all, the NTCA, to look after the grounds. Council was able to do it, and it became obvious that this really, as a sporting precinct, would be better managed by council and in all aspects as far as the management of the ground were concerned. So I think the recommendation as it's been put is that we would approve the transition of the management and maintenance from Cricket North and, the NTCA into council's responsibility. I think is a good step and one that all the clubs seem to endorse, including the NTCA. And I think the only real is a little bit around the edges. The only bits of disagreement is who's going to manage the booking management. Is that something that is probably currently done more in a book, as I am familiar with, rather than something that is electronic, as you might book a doctor's appointment or perhaps a squash court. And booking a sports facility might need more nuances than just taking a booking for a day or a part of a day. And as such, I think that's one of the very important things that the council and the council officers who will be working with this, with the NTCA, need to work through so that we don't end up with a situation where the ground might be booked for cricket from one Saturday to the next Saturday and then something else happens on the ground on Friday that destroys the cricket wicket in the middle of it. That sort of thing needs to be thought through so that cricket, which has its particular nuances in season, to actually make sure that it gets looked after. Similarly though, it's important that the pre-season training and other things like that for the football clubs can commence without having perhaps negative impact on the playing surface to a point. And so that also will be rather more difficult to manage under just a normal computerised system, because unlike a hard squash court, the ground will get chopped up in wet weather and things like that, which means someone needs to be looking at it, not sitting in an office in Town Hall saying, yes, you can have that next Tuesday, unaware of what the condition of the ground actually is. So I think there's a few parts for these council staff to work through with both the NTCA and the tenant clubs, but I think this is a great step forward. I think the plans that we have seen, whilst we may not go for the big bang multi-tenanted single building, but perhaps something a little more dispersed around the ground, I think brings us great opportunity to have enhanced sporting facilities for not only cricket in northern Tasmania, but also for the football clubs, which will now be part of the revised football scene that will exist in Launceston once the Tasmanian Devils come into the scene in 2028. So I think it's a good point to come forward. I look forward to seeing how those issues, and including the plant and equipment acquisition, obviously the mowers seem to be a point of contention. Council have probably been using mowers that were probably some years old. We may choose not to want to continue to use those and buy our own, or perhaps even have our own from York Park that we can use easily across both facilities. So those sorts of issues need to be sorted out. We have till March 2025 to do that, and I think this is a good first step forward, and I look forward to it being a good transition for the betterment of all the clubs, and particularly for all those who do play both cricket and football and soccer down at the NTCA ground. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Pentridge is the seconder.
I've maintained, and I've had a little bit to do with this. I'd probably like to start off by thanking all you people for your honesty. Well, I hope it's honesty. And I'd also like to thank the previous management for all the work you've done all the years. And as you both know, my heart goes out. I don't think I'm going to get a much better reception when I leave here than what you're getting. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. That's times. I support this community, and community has spoken. So I just, and I have been criticised for, I did say just recently that I've been reading a book on manners and diplomacy, but I haven't had a chance to finish it yet. But I think this could have been handled a lot better than it's been handled. But at the end of the day, it's all about the sporting complex and the kids, as far as I'm concerned. So let's hope we move forward and it works out to be as good as everyone hopes. Thank you, and I'm sorry to you too.
Thanks, Councillor Pentridge. Further contributions around the table? Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. And look, if these transitions were easy, then I'm sure that we would have handed over York Park to the state government by now. These things are, somewhat problematic. There's negotiations to be had. There are different competing interests, and rightly so. So there should be different views on what the outcome should be. That's normal. That's part of living in a community, in a society. That's how we make decisions. I think everyone could agree that we want the best community outcome in this situation. This is a really, as I said earlier, much earlier in today's proceedings, and we had a workshop about this last week, and I said that, this is such an important community facility. It's different to York Park. York Park has become a premium facility, on the national stage. NTCA ground, by all means, has been on the national stage for many a year too. And I've, been a cricketer all my life, and not since I was old enough to swing a bat anyway. The NTCA ground holds that special place in all cricketers' hearts, I think, in Launceston. Northern Tasmania, we've got the proud history of cricket in Northern Tasmania too. And even the best attempts of the state government to destroy that haven't succeeded, really. We still have a strong cricketing tradition in the north, even though our promising players might have to move south if they want to go to the performance centre. My point is that I think everyone does want what's best for the community. This area, land is finite, and this area has that capacity to be a wonderful community facility. It already is. The management of the grounds, the actual upkeep of the grounds is something that council does have experience in and specialty in. It's what we do. Many sports grounds across our municipality, including the surface of York Park. So there's been lots of toing and froing, and what we want to see, or what I want to see anyway, is that recognition of NTCA ground and the continuation of that as not just its history but its future in Launceston and the future of cricket in Launceston. Just to put all the other sports aside for a second, I think that's an important part of not just our heritage but our culture, our sporting culture and our sporting future. So that's foremost in my mind, I suppose, in this whole process. I do see the need for change, and I do see the opportunity for an extended community sporting facility with the potential for that to be greater than the space that's there now. There are ideas around further expansion in the area. So this will become the sporting heart of Launceston, as York Park has been for a long time in terms of community sport. It's less so now, it's more elite sport. This will be Launceston's community sports central. And yes, Launceston Council does have the expertise to manage that. There's been talk around the booking system, the assets that are involved and things like that. And I'd like to think that those things are worked out in an even-handed way, not a lopsided way or anything like that. I don't know all of those details. I'm prepared to listen to those and I think act in good faith at the council and Cricket North and the NTCA. So I'm glad that everyone turned up here today to talk to the item, and that's really important, that we should have those discussions probably before today, really, because there's been toing and froing going on and people talking about different things that have been said or done or haven't been honoured or whatever it might be. That's when things get problematic, and I'm one for notoriously sort of ripping the scab off things and having a good look, let a bit of sunlight onto the situation, and that will act as a very good disinfectant most times. So if there are those continuing concerns, I do believe that needs to be brought forward. I think we can all embrace our sporting culture in the north of the state, is superior to any other corner in this island, and long may it be so. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Any further contributions? Professor Rose.
I started to support the motion. More importantly,
Just hit your button there, Councillor.
I feel that the council is right to be actively involved in running a sporting facility, which we desperately need more of those. The council has been very successful in running the aquatic centre, and you can see the number of people, young and old, using it. Launceston itself and northern Tasmania particularly needs to encourage its people to be more physically active. And I feel this is opportunity not just to maintain the NTCA, but also to develop it further. I hope that all my colleagues will support that motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Further contributions? To close, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, my fellow councillors, for their contributions. And look, I think I'll summarise what Councillor Walker said. There is a need for change in this area. The clubs that use it have certainly been supportive of council's efforts in this place. We do need to make sure that we work with the NTCA to get the best outcome in regard to the bookings, and perhaps a fairness in regard to the use of the mowers, maybe give it back to them to sell or otherwise. But other than that, I think this matter is now able to be moved forward, and I look forward to it and seeing where we go in 2025. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Putting it to the vote then, all of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. 19.2 is the Flood Authority report, with the recommendation that Council, in accordance with Rule 26 of the Launceston Flood Authority rules, receives the Launceston Flood Authority quarterly report from April to June. Somebody to move the recommendation. We just might have to wait for a second.
Yeah, we only have 6 councillors present. I know, 7. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait for a moment.
Might I suggest a small break? Chair?
No, we don't need a break.
I'm not allowed to suggest it.
You can suggest it. Does anybody want to move for a break? I'm happy to keep moving forward. Yeah, maybe if somebody gives... Oh, here's Councillor Pentridge. Sorry, just with our numbers. Okay, we're going to take a short break. Yeah, we'll be back at 3:30. Thank you, councillors. Moving forward to 19.2 with Launceston Flood Authority report. The recommendation is to accept the quarterly report. Someone to move. Councillor Britton, seconded by Councillor Harris. Councillor Britton.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Look, the flood report is the flood report. There's work being done to the levees and on the emergency warning system. Just good work by the Flood Authority, and we'll hopefully have a bit more stuff in this space to come soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harris, anything? Anything further? Any contributions around the table? Anything to close? Okay, putting it to the vote then. Accept the report. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. Motion's carried. At 20, we have Organisational Services Network. 20.1 is the budget amendments. We've got the recommendation here for Council to approve by absolute majority the changes to Council's 24-25 statutory estimates and consider adjustments made during the 1st of August to the 31st. Someone to move. Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Walker. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is a quarterly moving of the money from one account to the other, and I might ask a question for the officer just to run through it to explain it much more clearly than I can.
Okay. Manager Finance, Samuel.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. As you said, this is the typical monthly adjustments to our budget coming to Council. The main ones this month, there's some 313,000 adjustment between capital and operations, where we've identified capital expenditure that is operational or vice versa, and then an additional 215,000 of operational expenditure that's met by external funds that will be received.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for that. So yes, basically money in from external sources, the federal government in some of the cases, and really it just most of the report's self-explanatory. A lot of roadworks like this start off in one column, move to the other one as we actually come to do the work. Hopefully my fellow councillors will be able to read that, and I also agree that it's time to approve it.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Walker is the seconder.
I suppose apart from the various roadworks there that are listed and traffic management, there is, of course, the St Leonard's Master Planning, something that we were able to receive a federal government grant for, and that has been allocated in this amendments. And that paves the way for the council to do significant work in that area, in St Leonard's, which has been, I suppose, long touted, long overdue, something that I suppose other priorities have preceded it. And now in what I suppose is generally seen as a major growth corridor, Launceston Council can focus its attentions there. With that grant money, that I do believe it needs to be acquitted by mid next year. So we should see for our municipality some significant planning undertaken in that area.
Thank you. Further contributions around the table? Anything to close, Councillor Harris? Putting it to the vote then, all those in favour? All councillors present, the motion is carried. Looking at now 20.2, remission of rates. Invermay Road in Mowbray. Now this decision is by absolute majority that council, with the recommendation, remits the following rates and fees, which is $17,830.29, levied against the property in respect to the council's rates for the 24-25 year. That includes the general charge and the general rate industrial. Somebody to move. Councillor Harris, seconded. Councillor Britton. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is the long-touted Northern Suburbs Community Centre, which will provide a recreation hub, as it's now been touted, which will provide not only the 4 indoor netball courts, but 3 other multi-purpose courts. And the rates that we would have normally levied on this, we are forgoing this year, as we did last year, for some $13,400 last year, a further $17,000 odd this year. When they're finished, they will, of course, pay the normal rates for a state government-owned facility. So it is a small contribution towards what has become a much bigger project. So I hope the fellow councillors support us in this.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Britton, anything further? Anything around the table? Okay, let's go Councillor Walker, then Councillor Pentridge.
Yes, this is a small contribution, but let's not forget that Launceston Council has made a reasonable contribution, which is detailed in the agenda item today, totalling $1.25 million, not insignificant at all. And of course, you know, we're appreciative of the state government's investment in our northern suburbs, and also listed in this report is the details of the space and how it will be used and allocated. And I suppose there is concern in the community that it has somewhat shifted over time. It was considered the northern, community hub. It's turned into a recreational hub. It's certainly going to have a sporting focus in many ways, but I note that's listed here that youth engagement, community education and counselling areas, a multi-purpose office space that can be used for meetings, training and administration, and an open space for community gatherings of up to 800 people to come together, offering diverse services and opportunities. I think that's what needs to be continued to be emphasised in this process, that this facility is not just to be known as a sporting centre, but it is has a intention. There was always an intention for this to be a community centre, where the community can come together for other reasons, other social, cultural reasons, and that should not be forgotten. I suppose it would be easy enough to think that this is going to be a netball centre essentially, a bit of rock climbing maybe, and a couple of basketball courts. But yes, it deserves to be a centre that the northern suburbs can use for cultural and social purposes as well, and that should not be lost. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Councillor Pentridge.
I was worried somewhat about what I was going to do in retirement, but obviously I've got to read a lot more books. I failed. I can't support this today because I can't understand why we're all voting. And my understanding is the funding for this is coming from the state, which is money that's been contributed from right around the state and everywhere else. Why are we burdening this community by losing another $17,000 to support a state organisation? I would have thought the money we lose in rates comes from this community, my community, this community, our community. Yet what we're doing is where I would have preferred the state, remembering it was only just a couple of sessions ago that we seem to have had trouble supporting to a medical facility and allowing some fees to be discounted. We had a lot of conversations, and I think we did come to the party for some of it. But really, this is one of those, I mean, it's a bit of a rort, really, that we're taking money from the smaller community, right, at the expense of the much bigger community that can probably afford it. So that's probably it at that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Pentridge. I've got a question, Councillor Britton.
Thank you. Just for my own clarity, this is a state-funded. The state is funding this, but this is very much something that will be owned and used by the people of Launceston, isn't it? Yes. And this would be a little bit different to the previous decision, because the previous decision was for private development and private business, wasn't it? Not so much community use. Is that all correct?
That is correct. So in terms of how this is being funded, there's a $15 million contribution from the federal government, $27.5 million from the state government. They're both cash contributions to the actual construction. Our contribution is about $1.25 million, which has already been discussed. Most of that was for the asbestos removal. You might recall 12 months ago, council decided to remit the planning fee and also the rates for last year. So this decision here today in front of you is to remit the rates for this financial year. We can't remit rates in future years. I suppose part of our contribution, and bear in mind this is a project for the Northern Suburbs community as well, it's to make sure that the delivery of the project is in line with what the state and federal governments envision, so it does achieve the best outcome for the Northern Suburbs. So there's no compromise on the facility and its quality. And I will say that we do have budget for remissions of around about $406,000. So this is only a small fraction of that. And this remission can be accommodated within that existing budget.
And just to reiterate as well, this will be this will be our asset, will it, at the end?
No, that's incorrect. It will be owned and operated by the state government.
Further contributions or questions? So just to reiterate, by absolute majority is half of 12 plus 1. We currently sit with 7. So if anyone is against, that's okay, but it will fail. Councillor Harris, if I just want to ask a question, if you don't mind sharing, just even for a moment.
Yep, no problem.
So just for clarity around the conversation that was had in the very initial stages of getting this project going, what was that conversation with the state, if federal government is required, around rate remissions? Was it a part of the deal to say to the state and the federal government, say, look, we can put $1 million in, but further to that, our contribution, is there an expectation that this is part of our contribution is rates remission?
Look, I can't comment on that, unfortunately, Mayor. I wasn't present for those conversations, but this forms part of the Launceston City deal, and this contribution today, if approved, would form part of our contribution to the city deal and our investment in the city deal as well. In terms of what I understand our contribution was to be for this project, it was not to be involved in the construction or providing a cash contribution. It was the in-kind contributions, waiving rates, waiving planning applications fee where appropriate.
So would this be viewed as on sort of reneging from the deal?
You could certainly look at it that way, given we approved a remission of rates last year, and the planning application fee was remitted last year as well.
Cool. Okay.
Happy to
hand
the meeting back to you.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you. Yes, this was part of the city deal that was signed back in 2016. So that's why Mr. Williams wasn't on that discussion. And certainly it was all about state, federal and local government working together to deliver the best outcome for the local community. And so the 15 million from the federal government and the 26 million, it was upped significantly after one of the state elections, might have been 2022 or thereabouts, to increase what was being developed at the Northern Suburbs. And certainly former Mayor Albert Van Zetten was very keen to continue to stay on the council to ensure that this would actually get through and be finished. He finished in 2022 and here we are in 2024 and it's still not finished, but that is sometimes the nature of how things go in Tasmania. But I think this is simply our contribution that we, as the smallest of the three players of the three levels of government, can add to this facility, because it's much needed in the Northern Suburbs, as Councillor Walker said. It is needed as a community meeting space as much as a sporting facility.
and that's certainly what it was intended to be, and certainly that's what I hope it will become. So I do hope that all councillors around the table do support this motion today so that it can be carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Okay, putting it to the vote then. All of those in favour? Those against? All of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Okay, looking at our future direction. At 20.3, the City of Launceston public electric vehicle charges. Thank you, Sam. And joining the seat, Cam. The recommendation for this one is that Council proceeds with creating and publishing an expressions of interest to identify what opportunities exist with private organisations who specialise in the operation of maintenance and EV chargers. Somebody to move. Okay, I've got Councillor Walker and Councillor Harris. So Councillor Walker to move, Councillor Harris to second. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, and I am happy to stand to support this direction, the future direction for City Council to investigate, well, to ask for expressions of interest in this area. It's not necessarily core business for Launceston Council to provide these types of facilities. Although what I think is important, and the reason I did wish to move this today was to acknowledge that Launceston Council has that role to provide innovation, to intervene in the market when required. And in the early days of electric vehicle charging, that was absolutely required. If we were to encourage people to invest in buying an electric vehicle, or even tourists who would like to come to Launceston and have that facility, then that did need to be provided. And I'm sure that initial investment would have taken quite a while in the early days for it to pay for itself. Now this has become far more popular. Indeed, it is sort of generating a return for Launceston Council, and indeed there are some other private operators who have entered the field. I think this is a perfect example of a council's role in, what would you say, a mercantile area, in a commercial area where there is nothing being offered, or there's very limited options, or the market has failed for whatever reason, or the market, in this case, doesn't exist, for us to create that market. We've done that. It is successful. There are operators out there who have the expertise, probably have the scale of economy that we don't have when it comes to something like this, in order to facilitate, economic sort of return on what they do. I am not aware of, I suppose the only thing comparable would be, the sale of petroleum, of petrol for your cars, the service stations that are around. And of course, what we want there is competition. What we want is a competitive market where you can find the cheapest petrol to run your vehicle. With an electric charging station, I'm not sure if that's as applicable or not. So I shall take my seat again in leaving that question. Is there a concern that if one operator was to take over our operation and was successful in making a tender for our various operations, that it would have a stranglehold on the market? And would we consider multiple tenders and operators?
City Project Officer.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. We expect that the market would really dictate those prices. I guess there are other players out there. There's standard rates that we've seen, and we've actually had to do some investigation to work out rates through looking at what others offer. So we expect that it'd have to continue to be competitive to be viable.
Thank you.
And I will say that will all play out as part of this EOI process as well. So all that we're doing today as part of this recommendation is that we proceed with the actual EOI. We're not saying we're going to go out and directly engage anybody. This will all be brought back to council for a future decision.
Great, thank you. Councillor Harris is the seconder.
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, just a question, if I might say. One of the things that is obvious about where these public vehicle charges were originally positioned is all about where they were put in council-owned places. In fact, you know, Patterson Street East car park has one in it, and I think up at the Gorge. What is the intention regarding the ownership of the land that will be still there? Is it going to still be a parking spot for council to collect revenue from as they normally would, or will it in fact be, if you like, sold? Is there any intention or thoughts on what might happen? It is an expression of interest, I gather that, but it is one of the questions that was certainly raised by the community with me, is who's going to own the spot underneath it?
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Yes, it would still remain a car parking spot that we'd collect revenue from in exactly the same way that we currently do.
Thank you. As such, I have no problem in supporting this. It is just an expression of interest. We don't have to make a decision of disposing of them today, but as Councillor Walker said, this is a clear example where council has a role to play in setting up what it hopes the future might look like, and certainly with electric vehicles. There was no market, and so that's why there were federal government, state government grants to buy the charging equipment for local councils to install it. We were one of the early adopters, and as such, I think it's probably timely for us to have a look at the market and see what's out there. It isn't our core business, and as such, I believe it's one of those things that we need to really look at. And also in regard to the expertise and the carrying of spares and ultimate replacement of what can be, in some cases, many years old equipment. Technology changes a lot in this space, and you know, the original grants and the original equipment probably is now no longer state of the art, and as such, there's probably going to be much better outcomes that we should look at. The other thing I'd like to mention is I do see the future being a bit like what might be seen in Europe at the moment, where almost every light pole or every parking meter actually provides EV charging capability. And it would be interesting to see through the expression of interest whether in fact any operator who might buy our existing business wants to also consider how they might move into that space and again be using our curbside parking spaces to gain access to the powering, the charging equipment. So interested to see what comes out of this.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Further contributions around the table? Anything to close, Councillor Walker?
Just noting the community engagement implications and that transferring ownership and control to a private operator could be seen as a negative by the community. So transparency throughout the process is critical. It's just, satisfying to see that there as a consideration in this process.
Thank you. Putting it to the vote. All of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. 21, the Federal Election Advocacy Projects from the Chief Executive Officer Network. The recommendation is that Council approves the advocacy campaign to seek funding for the Princess Theatre and Earl Arts Centre redevelopment, Northern Tasmanian Cricket Association Sports Complex redevelopment, Launceston City Hard Works package, master planning for QV Mag Discovery Centre, and the planning and construction of a new indoor sport and recreation complex with entertainment facility. Somebody to move, Councillor Harris. Seconded by Councillor Pentridge. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, this is timely. We will be having a federal election sometime in the next 6 to 8 months. Some will say it might even be before Christmas. So having a list of projects that we feel are shovel ready, and certainly the Princess Theatre is the most shovel-ready of those. We're already taking the steps necessary in that industry to book out the Princess Theatre for this work to commence in 2026. So I do hope that there are state or federal funds directed to this. $30 million is a big expense for a local council, and certainly we would hope that the federal government would certainly come on board to help co-fund that particular project. The NTCA, we were just talking about it earlier today, and that is something that ultimately $60 million could be spent out there, but there can be broken down into smaller packages. The Launceston City Heart, again, can be broken down from the $42 million, but if we're able to get some funding towards it, QV Mag, Discovery Centre, just master planning for $2.5 million. That is something that is probably essential for the QV Mag's future, if it is to operate or continue to operate in a manner that is suitable for an organisation of its standing as a research and facility that it is. I mean, it's almost too big for Launceston as a council. While it is part of council, it needs a different mode of operation in the future. And finally, the indoor sport and recreation complex. This is what is potentially being talked about for basketball as a stadium being developed as part of the UTAS Stadium final stage, which is the southern grandstand, being then built over what was known as the bike track to the south of the UTAS Stadium to provide a 5,000-seat basketball stadium, which will then ultimately probably replace what is being used up at Silverdome for things like Tassie Devils game, Tassie Jack Jumper games, got to get the sport right, but also can be reconfigured into at least 3 other basketball courts. We are well short of basketball courts in northern Tasmania, some 20 courts short. So even with the extra courts being added in the northern suburbs to come online shortly, we're still well short of what's required in what is very much a growth sport. So having this list of, a shopping list somewhat of what federal government could support is very important, and if you don't ask, you never get. So I look forward to everyone supporting this today.
Thanks, Councillor Harris. Councillor Pentridge is the seconder.
I'm all happy with what Mr. Harris has said.
Thank you. Further comments around the table? Councillor Walker.
Yes, I wonder if this list is written in desirability order or not, whether there's an equal value. They've got a number beside each of them, and I suppose, are we agnostic when it comes to what we want? Do we have a preference? I certainly do, and I'm sure every other councillor does too, and I'm not sort of shy to say what that is. And I will start at the end of that list, the new indoor sport and recreation complex. This is the idea that next to York Park we could build an entertainment complex, a basketball facility that is capable of holding 5,000 people. Now, when this was first presented as a concept to Launceston Council, I did vote against it. And the reason I did vote against it is I thought we had much higher priorities to spend $130 million on, and I continue to believe the same. I think as desirable as it might be for someone who loves their basketball, as desirable as it might be to have a 5,000-seat indoor entertainment space where you could put on a performance or whatever it might be, I think we have far more important things on our plate than an indoor basketball facility. So I'll make that point clear because my instinct and my desire is to support this decision statement today. I think when it comes to the Princess Theatre and the NTCA grounds, these are used by thousands of people in not just Launceston but northern Tasmania. I think we know that the Princess Theatre is overdue for this work and the Earl Arts Centre. I think we know that our sporting grounds are in need of expansion and of good management to make the most of the spaces that we do have. But when it comes to these operational matters like the City Heart and developing planning for the QV Mag, I think these are ongoing works that are important that we should seek funding for. It's just that this new indoor sports and recreation complex is something that I can't bring myself to. I'd be happy to move an amendment if I thought I had support around the table to remove that from the list. That's how strongly I feel about it. I won't test the room, but I'll just make my point by standing today. I support everything else on the list, and I think essentially for me, the top two are probably the two that I see as the most urgently required in terms of the broader community benefit. And I suppose they're all big ticket items, but $130 million for one basketball arena, to me, it seems like that would take the lion's share away from everything else if we were lucky enough to be funded for something like that. $130 million is being spent in that vicinity on York Park. That's fantastic. That is an existing facility. That is something that has brought a lot of benefits to Launceston and hopefully will continue to. I don't think that would be the same for the entertainment facility. And I do think that we have higher priorities at the moment. So I'll leave it at that. I'll support the motion and I shall await with interest as to see what federal members and indeed, potential members do take an interest in as far as this goes. But I do think it'd be prescient for Launceston Council to also have priorities in mind when it comes to this from the table, because we can't fund everything all at once continuously. When you tally this up, you can only focus on what you can do. And like I say, if there was $130 million going, I think there's some far more pressing social, environmental and community issues that would be deserved of being on this list, albeit that they maybe haven't come to fruition as far as planning goes, and which these do have the benefit of that previous work. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Walker. Councillor Professor Raze.
Well, I'd like to respond
just push it back
about the placement of priorities. I will put number 5 as number 1. What's the most concern about the community of Northern Tasmania? Half of our population have at least one chronic health problem. How are we going to tackle them? Well, because encouraging physical activity is priority. Yeah, 75% of your population are not really physically active. We have to provide facility for our young generation to take it. Number 2 is not enough. And you have to give them variety. You've got the soccer, you've got the football, you've got the cricket. Basketball is growing, especially with Tassie, our jack jumper. Especially they're doing well. That means they will attract more people to take on the sport. And I believe there is massive shortages of these indoor facilities. That's how we encourage our young generation to be active. And I think it's a good opportunity to put our vision for the city. And so I will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Professor Raze. Further contributions around the table? To close.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, look, I think no doubt everyone is in support of some or all of those items on the list. I will just say that the $130 million entertainment facility did include some facilities for the UTAS Stadium in post-game recovery, physiotherapy, and various other things that I think would tie in nicely with what Professor Raze was saying as well about the needed facilities here, as well as provide potentially a great conference facility that could finally unlock Launceston from its current problem of not really being able to hold a conference greater than 300 people or 300 delegates to being something that could be much larger. So I do think that this particular facility is still worthy of being on the list, and if I had done the agenda, I probably would have just dot pointed them all rather than numbered them all. But I do hope that everyone will still vote for this and support this motion here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. And just a little thing to say that the Launceston Conference Centre can hold quite a few people up there, up to 800. I had a little person mention to me when I said similar things as well. We'd probably talk about CBD. Just before we get to the vote, just a real thank you to the team as well, particularly Sarah, for the work that's been going on here. in this space after the workshop too today. So thank you for that. And with that, we put it to the table for a vote. All of those in favour? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. Moving into late items, we don't have a late item as a part of open, or the lease is going into open, is it? Oh, we accept the late item that will be then spoken about. So item 22 is late items. We do have a late item, which is the Punchbowl Cottage lease, which will be then put through at 23.3. So somebody to move the late item, Councillor Harris, a seconder, Councillor Britton. All of those in favour to accept the late item? That's all councillors present. The motion is carried. We haven't done that before. Okay, there we go. Moving into 23, closed council. This requires absolute majority. So everybody, a recommendation is that we move into closed council to discuss the following matters, which is confirmation of minutes, councillors' leave of absence and the Punchbowl Cottage lease. Somebody to move? Councillor Walker, seconded by Councillor Palmer. All those in favour? That's all councillors present. We moved into closed council. Okay, somebody to move that the table of contents currently displayed is what we spoke about. True and correct record of closed. Been moved by Councillor Britton, seconded by Councillor Harris. All those in favour, all councillors present, the motion is carried. Closing of floor with the next meeting here at Town Hall in a fortnight.